Chapter 1298. When Elder Yang and Red Oriole saw Long Yu charging over, they flew to either side of Long Yu and unleashed all sorts of techniques. No matter what, they had to get rid of the winged sand statues that were charging toward Long Yu. The many-winged race clearly protected the array core that was constantly producing the sand and winged stone statues very well. When it sensed that someone was heading towards the eye of the formation, dozens of pale yellow lights suddenly flickered nearby, condensing into at least 40 winged yellow sandstone statues in an instant. When so many sand statues appeared and flew toward Long Yu, Elder Yang and Red Oriole were both shocked. "I'll restrain them." Elder Yang let out a muffled groan. His entire body exuded the power of radiant divine runes, forming a hexagonal cage of light that rumbled towards the large group of winged stone statues. In the next instant, Long Yu and Red Oriole discovered that the winged sand statues that were trapped in the hexagonal cage of light had all stopped moving. It was as if time within the cage of light had suddenly stopped. "Don't stop! Hurry up! I can't hold on for much longer," Elder Yang shouted. "This is only temporarily stopping the power of these stone statues. Controlling so many sand statues at the same time, I'm afraid they can only last for 5 breaths of time at most." To the current Long Yu, 5 breaths of time was definitely an extremely tight period. Fortunately, he didn't slow down. Even when he saw a large group of winged sand statues suddenly appear around him, he didn't stop moving. 2 breaths after Elder Yang controlled the stone statues, Long Yu finally reached the spatial barrier protecting the formation eye. Path of the 9 Underworld, disintegrate. Without any hesitation, Long Yu cast his innate mystique at the spatial defense barrier, and a dark path made of spatial divine runes extended towards the spatial defense barrier. After merging with the spatial essence, the path of the 9 Underworld's connate ability had the effect of disintegrating spatial divine characters, and it didn't disappoint Long Yu. At this moment, even the tyrannical space barrier of the ancient foreign race's ruins began to collapse under Long Yu's path of the 9 Underworlds. Upon seeing this, Red Oriole heaved a sigh of relief. She had been afraid that Long Yu's divine power would suddenly fail. As for Old Yang and Ba Xiong and Su Yuqing, who were fighting fiercely on the other side, the 3 of them were curious as to how Long Yu was able to break a hole in the spatial consciousness barrier. Now that they saw this scene, they finally understood. They couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. This brat's methods are indeed mysterious. I really can't tell that he's just a lesser ruler. The 3 of them had a whole new level of respect for Long Yu. Based on their perception of the spatial barrier from afar, even if they wanted to destroy it, they wouldn't be much faster than Long Yu. Therefore, they could tell at a glance that Long Yu was indeed more powerful than ordinary people in this aspect. If Long Yu's martial realm rose to the Great Ruler level, or even the level of their current 5th stage Great Ruler level, he would definitely surpass them by a large margin. At the very least, in terms of destroying spatial barriers, he would far surpass them. This was indeed an impressive method. Because of this, the spatial essence's strengthening effect on Long Yu could be said to be heaven-defying. If it was given to someone else, perhaps there wouldn't be such an effect. One had to know that the path of the 9 Underworld was Long Yu's last connate ability, and it was naturally the most powerful one. It wouldn't be inferior to the Book of Shadows or the 9 Underworld Hunter. Even if the path of the 9 Underworld isn't strengthened by the spatial essence, the path of the 9 Underworld should still have some effect on disintegrating spatial divine characters. It's just that I haven't really used this innate ability since I stepped into the 7-Star Emperor, so I didn't notice it. The spatial essence should only strengthen the path of the 9 Underworld and not change its nature. Therefore, the reason why Long Yu could possess such a heaven-defying method was actually inseparable from the path of the 9 Underworld itself. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths passed in the blink of an eye. The hexahedral cage of light released by Elder Yang could no longer hold on and was collectively broken by over 40 winged stone statues. Then, those stone statues all flew towards Long Yu. "Be careful," Seeing that Long Yu still hadn't dealt with the spatial barrier, Red Oriole's heart immediately skipped a beat. She hurriedly raised her hand to activate the blood-colored divine characters, and the 6 demon blood wings and the blood-colored wings on her back subconsciously spread out. The blood-colored divine characters rapidly spread out, directly sealing off the space around Long Yu. This was an Archean martial technique that Red Oriole had cultivated. It could seal off space with the blood-colored divine characters, filling up the entire space to the maximum and preventing others from passing through. The effect was similar to a spatial barrier, but the principle behind this martial technique was different from other spatial barriers. In comparison, it was a bit simpler and more violent. When the blood-colored divine characters spread out and filled up the surrounding space, it blocked the path of the winged stone statues. However, those stone statues didn't attack Red Oriole. Instead, they all activated the power of the divine characters and charged towards the blood-colored divine characters. Under the combined attack of over 40 winged stone statues, the blood-colored divine characters didn't even last for a single breath before they were declared to be broken. However, the good news was that it just so happened that Long Yu had finally dealt with the spatial barrier and completely disintegrated it. Then, the core of the formation was directly exposed in front of them. Elder Yang finally arrived at this moment. Without any words or hesitation, the divine characters of light condensed into a resplendent beam of light. Before the winged stone statues could even react, the beam of light had already bombarded and penetrated the core of the formation. After the spatial barrier was destroyed by Long Yu, the remaining formation core no longer had any protective power. It was easily destroyed by Elder Yang's resplendent beam of light. When the core of the formation was destroyed, all the winged stone statues seemed to suddenly lose all support and instantly disintegrated. They turned into yellow, sand, and dissipated into metal elemental primordial force. Very soon, the densely packed winged stone statues outside the hall had all disappeared due to the explosion of the formation core. Elder Xiong and Su Yuqing were still a little taken aback, but they immediately reacted, and a look of joy appeared on their faces. Well done! Both of them nodded at Long Yu at the same time. There was some surprise in their eyes. They had originally thought that Long Yu might not be able to break the spatial barrier so quickly. In that case, when the 40-odd winged stone statues approached Long Yu, he would only be left with a dead end. Even Elder Xiong did not expect Long Yu to be able to break the spatial barrier so quickly. Elder Yang's performance could be said to be normal. After all, he was also a 5th-stage Dominator expert. However, Long Yu, a mere lower Dominator, also played a rather crucial role in the battle against the yellow sandstone statues. People could not help but look at him in a new light. It seems that Consort Yu's insistence on bringing you here is somewhat reasonable. As expected of a kid who can hold back 3 foreign demigods, hee. The seductive young man of the Fox Immortal Demon clan, Su Yuqing, glanced at Long Yu from head to toe. The look in his eyes made Long Yu's hair stand on end. Don't relax yet. They have encountered trouble inside. Let's hurry and prepare for their retreat. At this time, before everyone could heave a sigh of relief, Elder Yang spoke with a solemn expression. He returned to his human form and once again displayed the situation he had observed through the soul link in front of everyone. Long Yu, Red Oriole, Elder Xiong, and Su Yuqing all looked towards the image in the air. Indeed, in the image, they saw Consort Yu and the others quickly running through the yellow sand passage in the Yellow Sand Palace. Behind them, there were actually many 7th-stage Dominator Realm yellow sandstone statues desperately chasing after them. These yellow sandstone statues not only had the cultivation of a 7th-stage Dominator, but they also had uniform battle awareness. They were a complete set of combat stone statues. Even Consort Yu could not deal with 3 of these yellow sandstone statues alone. Not to mention, there were more than 10 yellow sandstone statues chasing after them. This made it difficult for Consort Yu and the others to fight against them. Seeing this scene, Elder Xiong and Su Yuqing's expressions instantly changed. There are so many yellow sandstone statues, and they were definitely condensed by the formation inside the yellow sand palace. Looking at the situation, Consort Yu and the others had no way of destroying the formation inside. In other words, there would be more and more 7th stage Dominator Realm yellow sandstone statues. This multi-winged race's formation is really powerful. There are formations outside and inside. If all of us enter the yellow sand palace together, and we are chased out, we will discover that there are thousands of 3rd and 4th stage Dominator Realm stone statues surrounding us. That scene was truly unimaginable. Fortunately, Long Yu and the others had already destroyed the formation outside. At least it was clean outside, and there was no danger. We have to help them and destroy that water primordial power barrier first. Otherwise, it'll be too late when they come out. Old Yang analyzed the situation, looked around, and glanced at the 4 people. There's another piece of good news. When we were fighting fiercely just now, they already obtained quite a few good things from the Yellow Sand Palace. Among them, the most important are quite a few Heaven Crystal Grade 3 and above creation items. If we can get out of here alive, we'll be rich. A Heaven Crystal Grade 3 creation item. These words caused the eyes of everyone present to light up. It wasn't just Long Yu and Red Oriole. Even Ba Xiong and Su Yuqing were the same. It had to be known that a Grade 3 Heavenly Crystal rank creation was worth 5 million battlefield merit points. Moreover, Consort Yu and the others had taken several of them at once. Chapter 1299. Elder Yang's news made everyone excited as if they had been injected with stimulants. Elder Xiong yelled, "Hurry up! Don't dawdle! Destroy that water elemental origin force barrier. Let's hope they can last a little longer. Even if we work together, we'll probably need at least 2 incense sticks time to destroy this water elemental origin force barrier. Let's attack together." Su Yuqing's seductive body also stiffened at this moment. She was really looking forward to seeing the 3rd grade Heaven Crystal Grade creation item that Old Yang had mentioned. Long Yu and Red Oriole looked at each other and flew towards the water elemental origin force barrier outside the Yellow Sand Palace. This water elemental origin force barrier is completely overlapping with the spatial barrier that blocks the storm. In other words, if we destroy this water elemental origin force barrier that suddenly appeared, the spatial barrier will also be destroyed. Red Oriole scanned the situation in front of her and felt a little more admiration for the multi-winged race. In other words, even if we escape from here, we need to be prepared to be attacked by the metal elemental origin force storm. Moreover, we can directly destroy the Yellow Sand Palace that has been invaded and borrow the metal elemental origin force storm's hand. Long Yu nodded. He could also feel the scheming of the multi-winged race's construction methods. These methods were rather terrifying. Unfortunately, all of this was completely meaningless in front of Long Yu. After all, whether it was the water elemental origin force barrier or the metal elemental origin force storm, he had nothing to fear. Coincidentally, these methods that the multi-winged race prepared were all things that Long Yu could directly face and deal with. Or in other words, because the Void Nether Dragon Blade and the 9 Nether Path disintegrate the spatial divine characters, I can deal with the 5 elemental origin force more easily than others. Long Yu thought of many more things, and the situation derived from this was that Long Yu's current exploration ability was far ahead of the combined beast race and human race. Even some powerful 5th or 6th phase dominators couldn't compare to Long Yu in terms of survivability under extreme circumstances. This could be said to be an extremely strange phenomenon. After all, Long Yu's current cultivation realm was only that of a lesser ruler. However, this was the terrifying aspect of the origin furnace. After all, among the entire human race and the monster race, there was probably no one who possessed a combat weapon forged from the absolute beginning furnace, because it was not something that could be easily obtained. Not only did it require the experts in the demigod level to create the space-time pathway, but it also required a lot of powerful beings to fight and self-detonate in the pathway. That was the result of the terrifying energy generated in order to condense the original beginning furnace. When Long Yu smelted the Nether Dragon Blade, how much energy did he use to form the absolute beginning furnace? Countless members of the Ice God clan chose to self-detonate. Countless members of the Demon Race's army were exerting their full strength. Both the Demon Clan and the Ice God clan had suffered heavy losses. How many times would this happen? At least in the past 1,000 years, nothing like this had ever happened in the Demon Race's territory. It could be said that Long Yu had benefited from this disaster because of the Ice God clan's plan. To be honest, Long Yu is definitely one of the final winners of the Ice God clan's invasion plan. As for the other winners, it was obviously the Demon Race's army. To be able to eliminate 3 demigod races was an even rarer achievement. In short, countless coincidences had forged the current Nether Dragon Blade, and also created the heaven-defying Long Yu. Very quickly, Long Yu's group of 5 arrived in front of the water origin power barrier. The others had already sensed that this barrier had overlapped with the previous spatial barrier. It was impossible to destroy one of them, so they could only destroy both of them at the same time. There's no other way. Let's just charge. Otherwise, if we wait until they escape from the Yellow Sand Palace, we won't be able to hold them off with so many 7th Phase Dominator Realm Yellow Sand-Winged Stone statues chasing after them. Elder Yang didn't hesitate. He raised his hand and condensed several pale, white beams of light, which landed on the 2 spatial barriers. Immediately, a slight mark was left on the inner barrier. Boss Xiong, Su Yuqing, and Red Oriole didn't hold back. They used their strongest techniques and directly bombarded the 2 spatial barriers. Long Yu was the last to attack. He still used the 9 underworld path. At this time, he alone was probably as effective as the 4 of them combined. A dark path suddenly appeared and bombarded the 2 layers of the spatial barrier, directly disintegrating the inner layer, and then continued to fall on the outer layer of the water element power of Genesis. This effect left Boss Xiong, Su Yuqing, and the others dumbfounded. Although they were already mentally prepared for Long Yu's methods, when they saw Long Yu's heaven-defying methods with their own eyes, they couldn't help but be shocked by Long Yu's strength. Amazing, amazing. Could it be that this method of yours is effective against water element absolute beginning power? Su Yuqing didn't believe it. He stared at the layer of water element absolute beginning power. He wanted to confirm how powerful Long Yu's 9 underworld path was against spatial divine runes. Clearly, Long Yu's path of the 9 underworld didn't disappoint him. As the path of the 9 underworld continued to condense and extend, it bombarded the water element Genesis energy barrier, and one could easily see the barrier crumbling. Because it was water element absolute beginning power, the speed of disintegration couldn't be as fast as before. However, this speed was still inconceivable to Su Yuqing, Boss Xiong, and the others. At this speed, I'm afraid it'll only take half an hour to break through these 2 barriers. He's really too fast. Good lad. He's the equivalent of 4 of us, haha. Boss Xiong laughed loudly. In order to buy time, he didn't waste any time. Instead, he focused all his energy on condensing Berserker divine runes, turning them into Berserker fists that continuously smashed at the water element absolute beginning power barrier. This also increased the speed at which the barrier disintegrated. Boss Xiong, Su Yuqing, Elder Yang, and Red Oriole had all become Long Yu's foils. If news of this spread to the army on the battlefield, countless people would probably not believe it. If the opponents of Boss Xiong, Su Yuqing, and the others knew about this, it was even more likely that they would mock them. It was all too normal. Everyone attacked the 2 spatial barriers with all their might. One of them was a water element absolute beginning power barrier, so it was still relatively difficult to break through. The 8 people led by Consort Yu into the Yellow Sand Palace were obviously aware of the situation outside. After all, there were people in the team who were connected to Elder Yang's soul, so they could sense each other's situation. In this kind of risky operation, Elder Yang's soul connection was really extremely useful, especially when they were acting separately. This method could ensure that the connection between the two parties would exist at any time and would not be interrupted for some reason. They're coming out soon. They should be directly rushing towards us. Little brother Long, when that time comes, we'll all enter your battle weapon. Elder Yang said to Long Yu. No problem. Long Yu nodded, indicating that it was fine. Indeed, after breaking through these two spatial barriers, they had to be careful of the metal element absolute beginning power storm that was constantly raging outside. Entering the inner space of the void nether dragon blade was obviously the safest and most appropriate method. It was just that some people were unwilling, such as Situ Tianhe and Situ Qingyi of the Ice Bear Demon clan. From the start of Elder Yang's warning, only an incense's worth of time had passed. Long Yu and the others finally joined forces to break through the two spatial barriers. It was also at this time that Consort Yu and the others finally rushed out of the entrance of the Yellow Sand Palace. And behind Concubine Yu and the others, there were actually over 37th phase Great Dominator, level yellow, sand-winged stone statues that rushed out of the Yellow Sand Palace in one go. Hurry up, it's too late. Xiao Bai, who was following beside Consort Yu, shouted softly and raised his hand. A wave of illusory, divine text power enveloped everyone, and then instantly doubled everyone's speed. In just an instant, the 8 of them came to the gap in the spatial barrier where Long Yu and the others were. Well done. Xiao Bai glanced at Long Yu and the others and laughed heartily, then directly rushed into the inner space of the void nether dragon blade that Long Yu had just taken out with Consort Yu and the others. This time, even the 2 Ice Bear Demon Clan fellows didn't hesitate at all and directly rushed into the void nether dragon blade with the others. Long Yu didn't think that these 2 fellows had any objections against him. It was definitely because they knew very well what danger was about to befall them. So they rushed into the inner space of the void nether dragon blade without any regard for anything else. Elder Bear, Su Yuqing, Elder Yang, and Red Oriole all didn't hesitate. After Situ Qingyi, the last one to enter the inner space of the void nether dragon blade, the 4 of them also stepped into the inner space. In the end, Long Yu himself also returned to the inner space of the void nether dragon blade, and then communicated with Little Void with his divine sense, telling him to escape as quickly as possible. Long Yu didn't know what was going on, but seeing how anxious Consort Yu and the others were, he obviously didn't dare to be negligent. The void nether dragon blade turned into a blue streak of light and instantly flew to the gap in the 2 spatial barriers near the Yellow Sand Palace, then quickly disappeared from the area. In the next moment, there was a loud bang, and an extremely violent explosion occurred in the entire Yellow Sand Palace behind them. Chapter 1300. When the thunder rumbled within the Yellow Sand Palace, the entire Yellow Sand Palace was blasted to smithereens. The winged stone statues of the 7th phase sovereigns who had originally wanted to chase after him were all buried within at this moment. The entire vicinity of the Yellow Sand Palace had turned into a world of lightning and lightning. Fortunately, Long Yu and the others had just escaped from this area. Otherwise, they would have been enveloped by the lightning as well. Even Consort Yu would find it hard to resist such a thunderstorm head-on. Within the void nether dragon blade, everyone let out a sigh of relief when they sensed that Long Yu's absolute beginning divine treasure had already left the area of the thunderstorm. They were finally safe. Even though the storm of metal-type absolute beginning power would occasionally sweep over them, everyone discovered that the void nether dragon blade, a divine absolute beginning divine treasure of absolute beginning, could easily and stably move forward without being affected at all. What's with that thunderstorm? Elder Yang was the first to ask. There was a hint of confusion in his voice. It's me. A 6th-stage, sovereign realm demonic beast stepped forward. This person was a bald man with bare arms. There were some lightning patterns on his body, and they looked similar to Yi Ziwei's absolute beginning lightning seal. One look was enough to tell that he was a super expert with a divine absolute beginning lightning seal. This person came from the Thunder Lizard demonic race. His true form was a Thunder Lizard, and he was one of the strongest beast cultivator seniors in the Thunder Lizard demonic race. Based on how the others addressed him, he seemed to be called Dark Thunder. That was his name. It really is you. Su Yuqing let out a sigh of relief. He wasn't surprised that Dark Thunder was able to create such a terrifying and violent thunderstorm. He had seen Dark Thunder's various abilities in the past. Yes, when I entered the Yellow Sand Palace, I left behind a few formation imprints. Once I leave, I just need to detonate one of them, and all the lightning formation imprints in the Yellow Sand Palace will explode at the same time. The bald Dark Thunder stood in place. As he spoke, he glanced at Long Yu. This kid, on the other hand, has made me look at him in a different light. Not bad, not bad. Senior, you flatter me. It's good that no one met with any mishaps this time. Long Yu wasn't overwhelmed by the favor. There were simply too many times when he made people look at him in a new light. All right, let's take a look at our rewards this time. There are a total of 6 Heaven Crystal level creations, 4 of which are Grade 3, and 2 of which are Grade 2. If we convert them into Battlefield Army merits, their total value will be at least 40 million. Even if the 13 of us divide them equally, each of us will have more than 2 million. Consort, you said to everyone with a smile. She took out 6 identical yellow sand crystals from her bosom, but 2 of the crystals were a bit more resplendent. Obviously, they were the 2 Heaven Crystal level 2nd grade creation items. Items of creation are divided into Yellowstone, Mysterious Jade, Earthly Seal, and Heavenly Crystal. Each level is further divided into 5 grades. In other words, the best item of creation that exists in the world is only a 1st grade Heavenly Crystal. Long Yu thought, and now we've directly obtained 2 2nd grade Heavenly Crystal level creations. What a shocking harvest. Looks like the foreign ruins are indeed filled with treasures. Long Yu wasn't the only one who thought so. Everyone else had the same thought. At this moment, everyone's eyes were attracted by the 6 yellow sand crystals, and their eyes were burning with desire. Up until now, no one had died, but they had already obtained such a batch of creations. Even if everyone left now, they had already obtained a lot of rewards. However, at this moment, Situ Qingyi, the woman from the Ice Bear Demon clan, said indifferently, "What do you mean by sharing it equally among the 13 of us? I don't admit that Long Yu and Red Oriole are qualified to share it equally with us. Although they're of some use, the 2 of them combined are more or less one." As soon as she said that, the expressions of many people around them changed. To be honest, not many people present had changed their opinion of Long Yu and Red Oriole. Only Elder Yang, Boss Xiong, and Su Yuqing did. The others only knew a little about the situation through their soul link, so they didn't have much of an opinion. Most importantly, even Elder Yang, Boss Xiong, and Su Yuqing didn't think that Long Yu and Red Oriole could be mentioned in the same breath as the others. On the other hand, Long Yu was very strong. Moreover, he had a strong ability to disintegrate spatial barriers. Half of the reason why they were able to escape in time was because of Long Yu. Just based on this point, it was enough for Long Yu to split the spoils equally with them. However, Red Oriole really didn't play much of a role. Although she cooperated well with Long Yu and bought some time for Long Yu, she ultimately didn't play much of a role. Even Elder Yang and the other 2 thought so, let alone the others. Let's wait until we get out of here alive before we decide how to split the loot. There's no point in discussing this now. Consort, you glanced at Situ Qingyi and said indifferently. From her tone, it seemed that she wasn't sure if everyone would be able to leave safely this time. She seemed to be a little pessimistic, but she clearly had her own thoughts and speculations since she said this. No matter what, I strongly disagree with them sharing the loot equally, Situ Qingyi said with a chuckle. Situ Qingyi said with a chuckle. Then, Situ, Tianhe, and the 2 Ice Bear Demon clan senior demon cultivators all had the same opinion. It seemed that they had a strong opinion of Long Yu and Red Oriole. I'll listen to Senior Consort Yu. At this moment, Long Yu also expressed his stance. He did not really care about the distribution of the spoils of war. Even if he and Red Oriole were to get a share, it would not be a big deal. He understood that his martial arts realm was low, and most of the time he had come here, he was just messing around, of course. It also depended on what would happen later. Long Yu wasn't going to suffer an obvious loss. If it was something he deserved, he would fight for it no matter what. Even if he couldn't win, Shuai Luo and Consort Yu would definitely stand on his side. As for the others, Long Yu couldn't guarantee anything. Even if Elder Yang seemed kind and amiable, it was unlikely that he would give in so easily when it concerned his own interests. These things could indeed be discussed after they left. Everyone had tasted the sweetness of the loot, so they couldn't leave this foreign race ruins so quickly. Due to Consort Yu's call for a halt, the conflict regarding the distribution of the loot didn't escalate to an irreconcilable point. Everyone quickly focused their attention on the following exploration. Soon, everyone returned to the vicinity of the Eye of the Storm. Everyone came out of Long Yu's Nether Void Dragon Blade and let out a sigh of relief. The situation just now could be said to be quite thrilling. The combat strength of a 7th Phase Dominator rank Yellow, sand-winged stone statue far surpassed their imagination. Most importantly, those 7th Phase Dominator rank Yellow, sand-winged stone statues were all born together in battle. Their tacit understanding with each other was very high, and their teamwork was watertight. They were very difficult to deal with. Even Consort, you didn't dare to fight with them for too long. If we encounter yellow sand palaces again, we'll have experience. Everyone was somewhat gratified. In any case, if they succeeded this time, they would have more confidence in encountering them in the future, and their rewards would be even greater. Because they were being chased by the 7th Phase Dominator rank Yellow, sand-winged stone statues, Consort Yu and the others didn't have time to take out all the treasures. They only took out the 6 most valuable Heaven Crystal rank creation items. In reality, there were quite a few good things among them, but no one was willing to risk their lives to take them. Time didn't allow them to do so. I haven't detected the existence of any other yellow sand palaces within a 50-kilometer radius for now. Consort Yu carefully scanned the surroundings. With the support of Long Yu's light of equalization, her spiritual senses' strength surpassed that of everyone present. Let's go around the Eye of the Storm and look in another direction. Shuai Luo made a suggestion, which everyone else agreed with. Just the empty area near the Eye of the Storm was 40 to 50 kilometers wide. If they went around to the other side of the Eye of the Storm, they might be able to detect some other useful information. After everyone nodded in agreement, they followed Consort Yu and went around the other side of the Eye of the Storm. As for Long Yu and Red Oriole, the two of them continued to enter Consort Yu's small world. After tasting the sweetness, everyone's attitude changed slightly. They looked forward to the rewards of this trip, and at the same time, their vigilance towards danger seemed to have relaxed a little. Although no one would completely relax, their level of vigilance was indeed much lower than at the beginning. This was a sign of danger. Soon, everyone followed Consort Yu to the other side of the Eye of the Storm. It took them about 2 hours. After all, they still had to resist the constant suction from the Eye of the Storm when they took the detour. Fortunately, with their strength, it was not difficult to resist the suction from the Eye of the Storm at this distance. Sure enough, there's another yellow sand palace. It's exactly the same as the one just now. It's in this direction, about 80 kilometers ahead. After arriving, Consort Yu once again used her spiritual sense to scan the area. Sure enough, she found another yellow sand palace. This discovery delighted everyone. Finally, there was something to be gained. Don't be careless. It's very likely that we'll still encounter danger along the way. We need someone to scout the way, just like before. Shuai Luo reminded everyone, then glanced at Long Yu. This was because Long Yu had gone to scout the way first. Not only had he returned safely, but he had also opened up a gap in the spatial consciousness barrier for everyone to pass through in advance. But this time, someone obviously couldn't stand it. Let's go scout the way this time, Situ Qingyi said aloud, glancing at Long Yu. Obviously, she didn't want to see Long Yu make any more contributions. She didn't want to give Long Yu a chance to stand out again. Otherwise, when the spoils of war were to be distributed, if everyone agreed that Long Yu would get a share alone, she wouldn't be convinced. Chapter 1301. No one stopped the man and woman from the ice bear demon race. After all, it didn't matter who went to scout the way. It was the same for everyone else. In any case, they didn't want to go. After all, no one knew what kind of situation they would encounter. Simply put, the possibility of encountering danger was much higher than the others. Because of this, when Long Yu first proposed to scout the way, the others didn't say anything. Many people even had a good impression of him. Now that the man and woman from the ice bear demon race were going to scout the way, the others didn't stop them. As for Long Yu, he was more than happy to be at ease. It was just scouting the way. If the other party wanted to go, they could go. He could take advantage of this time to rest and recover his strength. Soon, the man and woman from the ice bear demon race disappeared from everyone's sight. They used the Ice Divine character defensive barrier to protect their bodies and threw themselves into the storm of metal-type Genesis power. A storm of this level definitely couldn't do anything to them. Most importantly, no one knew that their attainments in that aspect were definitely not low. It was completely inconsistent with their martial Dao realm cultivation. When Consort Yu heard this, she narrowed her eyes and nodded. We'll wait for another hour. If they still haven't returned, someone else will go. Long Yu also heard Consort Yu's decision and felt a little solemn. Although he didn't like the man and woman from the ice bear demon race, he couldn't deny that they were definitely not weak. At the very least, they weren't weaker than the other fifth-stage sovereigns present. However, they still hadn't returned after so long. They must have encountered some trouble. Long Yu absolutely didn't believe that they wouldn't have taken so long if nothing had happened. If there really is some danger, even I might not be able to handle it. Sigh, what a headache. Long Yu thought to himself. He felt that it was quite troublesome. Fortunately, he couldn't be bothered to think about it. He would just wait and see. Moreover, Consort Yu didn't say that she would let him go when the time came. Of course, if Long Yu really had to scout the way, Long Yu still had his own way to ensure his own safety. However, he wasn't willing to take the risk unless it was absolutely necessary. Time ticked by as everyone waited. Very soon, 2 hours had passed. It was time for the other batch of people to be sent out according to Concubine Yu and Old Yang. They haven't come back yet. Looks like something really happened. The faces of everyone present were solemn. Boss Xiong, Su Yuqing, Meng Lei, and the others were solemn as well. Because once something happened to someone, it meant that this place was indeed very dangerous. Then, the rest of them might also be in danger. Originally, their vigilance had weakened a little because they had tasted the sweetness, but at this moment, they suddenly raised their vigilance and were even more cautious than before. Then, let's make a decision now. Who's willing to go out and scout? Our main objective this time isn't the Yellow Sand Palace, but to figure out what exactly happened to the 2 ice bear demons. Consort Yu said faintly, then glanced at everyone around her. She couldn't help but frown when she found that no one had the intention to go out and scout. In fact, Consort Yu also knew that if they sent people out in this situation, it was likely that they wouldn't be able to return. However, this was the only thing they could do now. Otherwise, if they went out together and encountered an accident, they would all be wiped out. No one volunteered to go out and scout. Long Yu waited in Consort Yu's pocket world for a while. He couldn't help but think that if he went out to scout at this time, he could negotiate with the others. However, before long Yu could make a decision, things suddenly took a turn for the better. A majestic and burly figure suddenly appeared in the yellow sandstorm ahead. He looked extremely disheveled. It was the man from the Ice Bear Demon Clan who had just left, Situ Tianhe. At this moment, Situ Tianhe was completely different from when he left 2 hours ago. At that time, he was high-spirited and dashed into the yellow sandstorm with Situ Qingyi with an indomitable spirit. But now, Situ Tianhe's ice armor had been completely shattered. He was drenched in blood, as if he had escaped from a tragic battlefield. The aura of ice divine characters revolved around him chaotically, condensing into ice from time to time, and then shattering. Along the way, the ice shards fell to the ground, mixed with blood, and were swallowed by the yellow sandstorm. Very soon, he ran out of the range of the yellow sandstorm. His face was full of despair. When he saw the others, he finally put on a smile. I've escaped. I've escaped. Situ Tianhe couldn't help but be a little excited. His face was mixed with ice shards and blood as he flew back quickly in the void. What happened to you? Seeing that Situ Tianhe had returned in such a state, everyone's face changed. Although Situ Tianhe looked miserable, it was much better than neither of them coming back. At least, they could ask him directly what had happened. It's a demigod illusion. A demigod illusion. On the way, there was a formation trap that could condense a demigod illusion of the multi-winged race. Even if it's not as strong as a real demigod, it's not far from it. We're definitely not a match for it. We're not a match for it all. Cough, cough. Situ Tianhe coughed up blood and flew toward them at high speed. He looked wobbly and embarrassed. Fortunately, he had returned alive. As long as he was alive, everything would be fine. It was a pity that the woman who had always disliked Long Yu, Situ Qingyi, didn't seem to be able to return a demigod illusion formation. Hearing Situ Tianhe's words, everyone's face changed dramatically. They looked at each other again and again, but there was only shock in everyone's eyes, including Consort Yu. The Tao of array formations was extremely mystical and mysterious. For example, the 9 nether soaring dragon array formation that Long Yu had seen before, the ancient Azura Palace, and 3 other ancient palaces formed the core of the array, and it possessed a terrifying defensive ability. The demigod illusion formation was one of the most powerful formations. It could condense the power of the formation and then create a demigod illusion whose power was comparable to that of a demigod. Of course, the demigod illusion was definitely not as good as that of a real demigod, but its power was not weak at all. If it was a head-on confrontation, it could definitely kill everything instantly. Even Consort, you might not be able to hold on for one breath in front of the demigod illusion. That was the absolute gap in power that no method or technique could make up for. Hearing that Situ Tianhe mentioned the demigod illusion formation, everyone's face became extremely awful. How far does the demigod illusion formation cover? Did you notice it? Concubine Yu asked Situ Tianhe with a stern expression. Generally speaking, the demigod illusion formation definitely had a range. This range affected the range of power that the formation could absorb, as well as the range of movement of the demigod illusion that was condensed. Understanding this point was very important for their next move. Although Situ Tianhe was exhausted from running, he still had the battle consciousness of a great sovereign. The more he was in a life-and-death situation, the clearer his mind was. Chapter 1302. Situ Tianhe's words dispelled everyone's beautiful thoughts. What a joke. The demigod illusion magic circle actually included the Yellow Sand Palace. How could they have any ideas about the Yellow Sand Palace? They could either break into the palace under the attack of the demigod illusion, or break the demigod illusion array first. But neither of them was a good choice. The former would definitely lead to death. By then, nobody would be able to escape from the pincer attack of the demigod illusion array from both inside and outside. As for the latter, there would definitely be sacrifices if they wanted to break the demigod illusion array, which was something none of them wanted to see. Anyway, there were many yellow sand palaces in this ancient alien relic. If they couldn't attack this one, they could always look for other yellow sand palaces. Are we still going to this yellow sand palace? Many people looked at Consort Yu. Some of them wanted to give up, but they were unwilling to do so. Consort Yu didn't make a decision for now. Instead, she continued to ask Situ Tianhe some questions about the details. After Situ Tianhe answered them one by one, Consort Yu frowned and pondered for a while, but she still shook her head in the end. Forget it. It's too dangerous. Let's give up on this yellow sand palace. Consort Yu quickly shook her head and said to everyone. The detailed questions she asked Situ Tianhe were mainly about how Situ Qingyi was killed and the location of the demigod illusion array. After a comprehensive consideration, she concluded that it was really unreliable for them to attack the demigod illusion array with only a few people. One mistake could lead to total annihilation. Even if they were lucky enough to succeed, they would have to pay a considerable price. The loss outweighed the gain. Hearing Consort use words, everyone nodded. No one said they didn't accept the decision because everybody had seen Situ Tianhe's miserable condition and heard how Situ Qingyi was killed by the demigod illusion array. Longyu, on the other hand, wanted to see the so-called illusion circle of demigods, to see the gap between it and the real demigods. However, it was obvious that nobody else wanted to see it, so Longyu had to give up. However, if we want to find other sand temples, we will run into a lot of uncertain dangers. Now that we all know that there are demigod illusion circles in the alien relics, we should be more careful wherever we go. Consort Yu said in a deep voice. Everybody else nodded too. Then Elder Yang proposed, we can create a mirror image or a clone when we explore the way and let the clone walk ahead. If there is an illusion circle of demigods, it can be triggered in advance. Clones do not have self-awareness. They may be ignored by the demigod illusion circle. It won't work. A black-robed figure on the side said coldly, leave this to me, Orb Soul. Don't talk about 50 miles, even if it's 100 miles. I can investigate it for you. But after this, when you distribute the spoils of war, you have to calculate more. After all, doing this will consume a lot of resources. This person was called Ball Soul. He was a 6th phase great sovereign expert of the Ghost Bat demonic clan. He was one of the strongest among them. His strength could be said to be second only to Consort Yu. He was even stronger than Boss Bear, Su Yuqing, and Shui Luo. The others also knew the method he mentioned. After all, most of them had interacted with each other many times and knew each other's methods. The Orb Soul usually raised quite a few great sovereign-level foreign race puppets. These foreign race puppets were alive and had their own consciousness. However, their consciousness could not control the bodies of the foreign race puppets. On the contrary, the bodies of the foreign race puppets were all controlled by the Ball Souls. It would take a lot of resources to raise a 3rd or 4th phase Great Dominator level foreign race puppet. However, in battle, these foreign race puppets will become a very important part of his combat strength. Right now, Ball Soul's intention was to send these puppets out to scout from afar. If the puppets were damaged, it would be counted on the others. When it came to dividing the spoils of war, more would be given to Ball Soul. In other words, everyone would share the losses equally. After all, they were all thinking for their own benefit. Ball Soul could not take the initiative to use his own strength to scout. He had to negotiate the conditions. Perhaps there is no need for Senior Ball Soul to go through so much trouble. Consort Yu privately explained Ball Soul's idea to Long Yu and Red Oriole. After listening to Long Yu's method, she smiled and said, in terms of scouting, we can leave it to little brother Long Yu. He has his own methods to ensure that we walk a safe path. Hearing this, everyone was a little surprised. How did Long Yu have so many methods? How does he want to discover the demigod illusion formation in advance? It's impossible. Ball Soul heard this and immediately said in a cold voice, he was lucky last time. If it was this time, he would have already been killed by the demigod illusion. Even if he has some kind of mirror doppelganger technique or some other illusionary technique with his cultivation base, it's impossible for him to explore too far in this foreign race's ruins. Not to mention 100 miles. Even if he goes 10 miles, I'm afraid he'll be destroyed by the Metal Origin Power Storm. Let's not talk about luck for now, but he does have a way. If you believe him, go to his absolute beginning divine item and let him search alone. Anyway, I believe in him. What about you guys? As Concubine Yu spoke, her red lips curled upwards as her gaze swept across the crowd. Many people couldn't help but nod when they saw Yu Fei's gaze. However, Yu Fei's words made Wan Hun very unhappy. He said in a sinister tone, even if he succeeds, will he ask for more spoils of war after this? The same result is far less stable than my method. Are you guys really willing to believe in a lower-level ruler? If we enter his absolute beginning divine item, and he leads us to death, we won't be able to cry even if we want to. If he can do it, he will naturally try his best. He won't harm you guys. Let's not talk about other things. Doesn't he want more cultivation resources? He knows very well that without you guys, he won't be able to explore more of the Yellow Sand Palace. Therefore, he volunteered to explore the way this time. He doesn't want more spoils of war. Don't worry, everyone. Consort Yu frowned slightly and glanced at Bal Sol. She was a little more cautious about this person. This guy's a bit of a loner. If there's a dangerous situation, he might be a ticking time bomb. However, now that everyone was united, Consort Yu didn't say much. Will you enter his absolute beginning divine item yourself? Bal Sol asked the last question. Yes. Consort Yu nodded and answered. That's good. I'll trust him this once. I hope he won't disappoint us. Bal Sol thought about it and nodded. In the end, he compromised. In fact, he was also very distressed about his puppets. Someone was here to scout for him without asking for a bigger share of the spoils. That was exactly what he was looking for. The only thing he was afraid of was that Long Yu's strength wasn't enough, and he would bring everyone to the path of death. But since Yu Fei believed in Long Yu, Muru Han would also believe in her for once. After Bal Sol agreed, the others didn't have any objections, including Ice Bear Demon Clan's Situ Tianhe. Elder Yang once again healed Situ Tianhe's wounds with heaven and earth reversal. It was convenient and fast, and Situ Tianhe soon changed into a new set of clothes. This way, on the surface, Situ Tianhe didn't look like a person who had been chased by the demigod illusion at all. He seemed to have completely recovered. However, from his eyes, one could still see the joy of surviving the disaster and the worry about their future actions. He seemed to want to say that they should retreat from the alien ruins, but he also knew that the others wouldn't agree because the harvest was too rich. Moreover, everyone felt that as long as they were careful, they shouldn't encounter too much danger. After making the decision, Long Yu came out of Consort Yu's small world. Then, he let the Void Spirit Dragon Dagger float in front of him and let the others enter the space first. Elder Yang, Boss Bear, and Su Yuqing were the fastest. They entered without any hesitation, and before they went in, they all gave Long Yu a look of appreciation. Little White went in right after them, followed by Xia Lei, Bal Sol, and the others. As usual, Consort Yu was the last. After Consort Yu entered the small world of the Void Spirit Dragon Dagger, Long Yu was finally ready to take action. In fact, it was just as the Orb Soul had said. If Long Yu condensed some illusionary avatars, such as the desolate ancient afterimage, to go out and explore, because their strength was too weak, they would be completely annihilated if they encountered the sandstorm. Also, even if their strength was high enough, the illusionary clones might not trigger the barriers of the demigod illusion array, because they didn't have a consciousness, which made such exploration meaningless. Therefore, Long Yu naturally had other ways to carry out this exploration. Firstly, with his current cultivation, only by condensing the Ninth Hell Hunter would he be able to travel 25 kilometers, or even over 50 kilometers, or even further in the Xenorace ruins. Therefore, the Netherworld Hunter was a means that he had to use. Secondly, the Netherworld Hunter had an internal space, which was the most crucial part. Before, when Long Yu was outside the edge of the space-time tunnel, he hid in the internal space of the Netherworld Hunter, and then he could resist the vortex of the power of the Origin 5 elements. As for now, in order to solve the problem that the Netherworld Hunter didn't have a consciousness and might not be able to trigger the barriers, Long Yu could directly capture a few Ice God from the small world and put them in. The combination of the Netherworld Hunter and the consciousness of the Ice Gods inside could be called perfect. At least for now, this kind of exploration could be called perfect. Anyway, Long Yu only needed to consume a little strength to create the Netherworld Hunter, and there were hundreds of billions of Ice Gods in his small world. The death of a few was not a big deal at all. Besides, they were all aliens, so what was there to feel pity about? Chapter 1303. In the end, Long Yu himself also entered the Nether Dragon Dagger. Then, the scene outside the Nether Dragon Dagger appeared in everybody's eyes. Right now, there was only the Nether Dragon Dagger, which was a divine quality primordial grade treasure, and the 10 Tartarian hunters that Long Yu had created. In each of the Tartarian hunters, there was an ice god that had been knocked out. In this way, the consciousness in the Tartarian hunters could trigger certain barriers, such as the demigod illusion barrier. According to Consort Yu's suggestion, Long Yu let the 10 Tartarian hunters set off one after another and explore in two directions. At first, two would be sent out, and when the two were 30 kilometers away, the other two would be sent out to follow the first two. The two directions that Consort Yu wanted to explore both avoided the demigod illusion magic circle that Situ Tianhe had encountered earlier. However, nobody knew whether there were demigod illusion magic circles or other dangers in those two directions. Everything was waiting for the result of Long Yu's exploration. The Nether Dragon Dagger, on the other hand, had not moved yet. Everybody was observing the Tartarian hunter's actions. This thing is not bad. Young man, you are very creative. Little White, the human young man, had learned about Long Yu's combination method. He smiled and praised him. However, at Long Yu's level, he was the only one who could perform such a method. After all, the Tartarian hunter's congenital technique was very powerful. Other illusions and clones could not achieve such an effect at all. Only the Tartarian hunters could travel in the void that was full of the primordial power of the metal class and move forward for a long distance. 30 kilometers away, the first two Tartarian hunters had encountered 4 or 5 sandstorms, but they were still safe and sound. At least, they were not disintegrated yet. Long Yu calculated in his mind and felt that the Tartarian hunters would have no problem walking 100 kilometers in the alien relic. Very soon, the third and fourth Tartarian hunters also set off, following the first two. Everyone was waiting. Long Yu was also waiting. When the first 9 Nether hunter in one direction walked more than 70 kilometers, it suddenly touched a strange restriction, causing a metal attribute maelstrom of origin power to appear. This maelstrom of absolute beginning power was much stronger than a storm. Because it was formed from the power of the array, the destructive power of the maelstrom was dozens or even hundreds of times stronger than a storm. The ninth hell hunter only persisted for the time of a single breath before it was obliterated, and it didn't have any chance to escape. Moreover, the maelstrom grew stronger and stronger, and it was actually ceaselessly absorbing the energy of the storm and the surroundings and ceaselessly expanding outwards. What kind of spell formation is this? Everyone here had never seen such an array before, so they couldn't help focusing their attention. They didn't dare to miss any details. Unfortunately, the 9 Nether hunter that was closest to it was also quickly devoured by the expanding storm. Everyone lost sight of the whirlpool. From the looks of it, the primordial force vortex will continue to expand. We need to prepare for it to expand to the eye of the storm. We must set off. Consort Yu said solemnly after thinking for a moment. Xiao Bai, who had been smiling mischievously, also became extremely solemn at this moment. That's right. Let's set off in advance. There's nothing wrong with the other 9 Nether hunter. We can head in that direction first. The others didn't have any objections. In fact, Consort, you could already feel the expanding maelstrom of absolute beginning power in the distance. It was constantly absorbing the metal attribute absolute beginning power that existed everywhere in the void of the foreign ruins, and then it was continuously spreading towards the eye of the storm at an extremely fast speed. Long Yu didn't hesitate. With a thought, the void nether dragon blade turned into a blue stream of light and flew out of the eye of the storm, charging headfirst into the metal attribute absolute beginning power storm. The blue stream of light pierced through the void. The metal attribute absolute beginning power storm couldn't affect its speed at all. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared from where it was. 9 Nether hunters, set off. Long Yu sent out all the remaining 9 Nether hunters, wanting them to explore the surroundings. However, Consort Yu stopped him in time. Don't act rashly. It seems that the foreign ruins still have that kind of maelstrom formation. If we wander around and trigger all the maelstrom formations, we won't have an easy time. Let's stabilize first and leave the range of influence of that maelstrom. Okay. Long Yu thought about it and nodded solemnly. He returned his attention to the 9 Nether hunters and let the remaining 9 Nether hunters return to his small world. Then, he sensed the situation around the 9 Nether hunter at the front. It was actually calm. At the beginning, he sent out 2 9 Nether hunters. One of them triggered the maelstrom formation, while the other had a smooth journey. Even the 9 Nether Hunter that was following 30 kilometers behind had a smooth journey and didn't encounter any danger. Very soon, the Void Nether Dragon Blade also rushed out of the yellow sandstorm and came to this relatively calm void. The blue stream of light was extremely conspicuous in this space. This place is quite calm. I wonder if there are any hidden traps. Many people subconsciously thought to themselves, this first 9 Nether Hunter has already walked 60 kilometers away. If I estimate, it should have left the range of influence of the Maelstrom formation. Old Yang glanced back with some lingering fear. Don't be too careless. If the vortex formation can expand beyond 70 kilometers, it will collide with the eye of the storm. No one can predict what will happen then. It's best if we run as far as we can. Shueluo said in a low voice. He then asked Consort Yu, did you detect anything? Right now, Consort Yu's spiritual sense could detect the situation within 100 kilometers. It was their most important channel of perception. Although Long Yu's first 9 Nether Hunter was 50 kilometers away, he could only know that it was safe within 50 kilometers. He couldn't know anything beyond that. Yes, slightly to the left of the first 9th Nether Hunter, there's a yellow sand palace that's even larger than the previous one. It's about 30 miles away from the 9th Nether Hunter. We can let the 9th Nether Hunter check it out first. Consort Yu said. Long Yu nodded. No problem. Then, he released the remaining 6 9 Nether Hunters and had them follow the first 9 Nether Hunter. A total of 4 9 Nether Hunters headed in the direction that Consort Yu mentioned. The 4 9 Nether Hunters all headed in the same direction to prevent touching too many restrictions. That way, it will be difficult for the people who are very close to them to escape. At the same time, the Void Nether Dragon Blade was also advancing, completely following the path that the first 9 Nether Hunter had taken. This way, the possibility of encountering restrictions would be greatly reduced. Very soon, the Void Nether Dragon Blade brought everyone to a stop around 200 kilometers away from the eye of the storm. They quietly waited for the news from the 4 9 Nether Hunters. Although Consort, you could sense the presence of the relatively large yellow sand palace. She couldn't accurately detect if there were any restrictions or formations along the way. The formation in the ancient foreign tribe's relic was simply too well hidden. Previously, Elder Yang had only managed to find the formation core of the sand-winged stone statue by combining his spiritual sense and a light of equalization with the help of his spiritual sense. Even Consort, you couldn't sense if there were any formations in the distance when they were so far away. She could only let the 9 Nether Hunters scout over. We're close. There doesn't seem to be any problems. My God, this yellow sand palace is 3 times larger than the one before. Very soon, when a yellow sand palace appeared in front of everyone, everyone's eyes widened. They were both surprised and pleasantly surprised. Most importantly, the 4 9th Hell Hunters successively arrived in the vicinity of the large yellow sand palace. They observed the yellow sand palace from various angles, and they didn't encounter any danger, nor did they touch any restrictions. It should be the same as the small palace from before. The formations will only be activated after someone steps in, and the winged stone statue will appear both inside and outside, Shuele deduced. He then looked at Consort Yu. How about it? Do we go over now? We can't miss out on this palace. If there's twice as many things inside as the small palace from before, our trip will be perfect. Even if we leave immediately after we succeed, we'll have gained a lot. Of course we have to go, but we need to plan properly. Consort Yu nodded. She believed that no one would be willing to miss out on such a large yellow sand palace. The Void Nether Dragon Blade continued to move. It turned into a blue stream of light and flew toward the direction of the large yellow sand palace. It closely followed the route that the 9 Nether Hunters had taken before. This was the safest way. Very soon, the large yellow sand palace officially appeared in front of everyone. Similarly, a layer of spatial barrier appeared in front of them. However, this barrier only blocked the yellow sandstorm and didn't stop living beings from entering. When a restriction inside the palace was triggered, A water-type barrier of Genesis power would condense outside the spatial barrier, trapping everyone inside. The situation of the multi-winged race's buildings should be similar. Just as everyone was about to enter the spatial barrier, something unexpected happened. An incomparably terrifying spatial tremor came from afar. Everyone's heart skipped a beat, and they looked in the direction of the spatial tremor. They were shocked to find that it was in the direction of the eye of the storm that they had stopped it earlier. It seems that the metal-type Genesis power vortex has finally encountered the eye of the storm. This is quite a commotion. Will it affect us here? Situ Tianhe looked in the direction of the eye of the storm worriedly. Stop guessing. We definitely won't be spared here. The only thing we can do now is to hide in this yellow sand palace and pray that this spatial barrier can even withstand the impact. Let's go in quickly. Chapter 1304. It was a horrifying scene. If the scene in the ancient alien ruins at the beginning was like the end of the world, then it was like hell had arrived. The rolling yellow sand was made of the primordial power of metal, and it instantly exploded from the eye of the storm. How much primordial power of metal was contained in the eye of the storm? It was unimaginable. The 200-kilometer distance that everyone had traveled was instantly covered by the endless sandstorm. The yellow sand occupied the entire void, and there was not a single gap for people to hide in. Without any hesitation, Long you could only let the void nether dragon dagger break into the spatial barrier near the large palace. Then, he could only resign himself to fate. This spatial barrier should have been used to protect the buildings of the multi-winged race from the damage of the primordial power of metal. But now, the storm was too strong, so strong that even the hunters of the netherworld could only exist in it for a breath's time. The storm of the primordial power of metal that instantly erupted was at least 10 times more powerful than the whirlpool of the primordial power of 5 elements at the edge of the space-time tunnel. No one could say for sure if this spatial barrier could withstand it. After entering this spatial barrier, everyone left the inner space of the nether dragon blade. They stood in front of the large yellow sand palace and looked into the distance. All of them looked like they had seen a ghost. The key to the scene of rolling yellow sand was the terrifying aura that came from it. Even demigods would be shocked by it, not to mention these great sovereigns. The sandstorm came very quickly. Before the crowd could find their footing, the sandstorm had already reached the vicinity of a large palace, and it looked like it was going to spread even further. Originally, the entire ancient foreign race ruins had some yellow light, but now that the storm had come, the entire space had become pitch black. The rolling sand formed by the metal primordial power had become so dense that it had completely covered the sky, causing the surroundings to become dark without the light of day. Can this spatial barrier withstand it? Everyone couldn't help but suspect this, and the truth didn't disappoint them. In just 15 minutes, the spatial barrier around the large hall that resisted the sandstorm began to shatter. The yellow sandstorm had already rolled over and enveloped the entire large hall of sand. The entire hall was already surrounded by the sandstorm. Quick, everyone go in, go in. Everyone's expressions changed drastically as they rushed into the interior of the large sand palace. Originally, they had hoped that the spatial barrier would be able to withstand a rolling sandstorm, but they discovered that they had been too naive. Even if they entered the large yellow sand palace, they would definitely trigger other restrictions and cause the yellow sand statues to continuously condense, but they couldn't care so much right now. If they didn't enter the palace, they would soon die in the rolling yellow sandstorm. Moreover, even if more yellow sand winged stone statues were continuously condensed, they would only be devoured by the storm and would not pose a threat to the group at all. Now, the greatest danger to the group was obviously the rolling yellow sandstorm. As for the other mechanisms in the palace, they could go as they pleased. Perhaps they could even use these restrictive formation mechanisms to slightly slow down the speed of the rolling yellow sandstorm. Everyone fled towards the yellow sand palace. Long Yu once again returned to Concubine Yu's pocket dimension. In the darkness, the only thing he could do was to wait. Wait for the dust to settle but there was nothing he could do at this point. Not only Long Yu, but everyone else could only wait under such circumstances. Of course, the others still had to run, while Long Yu only had to stay in Consort Yu's small world and let Consort Yu run with him. In comparison, it was still easier. Of course, in the current situation, it didn't matter whether it was easy or not, because everyone was at a critical juncture of life and death. The rolling yellow sandstorm erupted from the eye of the storm and quickly erupted in all directions, leaving no time for anyone to defend. Everyone had expected such a situation, but they didn't expect it to come so quickly and so violently. Now that the layer of space barrier outside the palace should have been destroyed, the sandstorm will soon hit the palace, Ball Soul said in a gloomy voice. If that kid hadn't been so rash and touched the maelstrom formation restriction of the metal attribute primordial power, we wouldn't have ended up like this. What does this have to do with him? Even if you let the foreign race puppets you raised go out, the result would still be the same. Lil White chuckled. It's meaningless to discuss this now. Hurry up and go to the center of the palace. Otherwise, we won't have a chance of survival. The seductive young man from the Fox Immortal Demon clan, Su Yuqing, was at the back, running in extremely fast speed. He had no intention of quarreling at all. All he wanted was to quickly enter the center of the palace, and then resign himself to fate. There are still many space barrier restrictions in the palace. With layers of protection, it should be able to weaken the power of the yellow sandstorm or the speed at which it spreads. Consort, you said calmly. Along the way, she raised her hand, and the 9 nether divine characters swept out, directly extending to both sides of the passage, and soon triggered a restriction. Everyone quickly passed through this area, and immediately after, the restriction triggered by Consort Yu was activated, condensing a layer of space barrier behind everyone. In the next moment, the rolling yellow sandstorm came from outside, and even the outer layer of the palace was completely destroyed. Only in front of the space barrier would it stop for a moment. No one said anything. It could only follow Consort Yu towards the center of the yellow sand palace. Fortunately, Consort Yu's spiritual sense was strong, and she still knew the way. Otherwise, everyone would probably die here very soon. Behind everyone, due to the restriction array being triggered, there were constantly yellow sand-winged stone statues that condensed, and all of them had the strength of a stage 7 great ruler. However, these sand-winged stone statues did not have the chance to attack Concubine Yu and the others. This was because the moment they were formed, the sandstorm behind them would sweep towards them and completely drown them. No matter what they were, they would be completely destroyed. The yellow sand-winged stone statues also had no chance of escaping. In this yellow sandstorm, they were like the most fragile paper man and were completely shattered. Consort Yu and the others were very fast, and everyone could feel the yellow sandstorm chasing after them like the god of death. The entire large yellow sand palace collapsed in this yellow sandstorm. From the outside to the inside, the ruins of the buildings were constantly swept into the sandstorm and then completely shattered, mixed into the yellow sandstorm. In the darkness, everyone ran at top speed. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, everyone finally discovered that they had already arrived at the center of the yellow sand palace. This was an extremely spacious palace, and there were many small palace halls around it. Each palace hall stored many good things, and the 6 heaven crystal rank creation items that Consort Yu had previously obtained were taken out from the palace hall beside the palace hall. When everyone arrived at this central palace hall, they finally triggered the restriction array again. In the surroundings of the palace hall, there was a continuous stream of 7th stage great ruler level yellow sand-winged stone statues being condensed. There were over 100 of them, and it was 3 times more than the 30 small palace halls from before. These yellow sand-winged stone statues had just condensed, and they quickly chased after everyone. However, their speed could not compare to the surging yellow sandstorm that was chasing behind them. In just an instant, the yellow sandstorm that swept up from behind them completely swept these yellow, sand-winged stone statues into it. However, everyone noticed that this time, the yellow sandstorm was not able to completely shatter these yellow, sand-winged stone statues. Instead, it only swept them into the sandstorm, making it difficult for them to move freely. It was obvious that the destructive power of the sandstorm was much weaker than it had been at the beginning. Finally, after layers of weakening, this sandstorm has reached a level where we can withstand it. Everyone's faces lit up with joy, and they each used their own defensive methods. Long Yu, who was in Consort Yu's small world, also heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the situation. Originally, he wanted to release the 9 Underworld tablet, if there was no other way, and hide in his own small world. Now, it seemed like there was no need for that. Consort Yu raised her hand, and the 9 Underworld divine characters and immortal Qi divine characters revolved together, forming a black and white defensive barrier that enveloped herself, Shui Luo, and Xiao Bai. It was not that she wanted to protect Shui Luo and Xiao Bai on purpose. It was just that Shui Luo and Xiao Bai happened to be by her side. Following that, rolling yellow sand came from all directions, engulfing the entire large palace building. Everyone was drawn into the yellow sandstorm, and their bodies were involuntarily scattered in all directions. However, what was gratifying was that the rolling yellow sandstorm could no longer cause too much damage to them. At least, most of them could survive. Inside the black and white defensive barrier, Consort Yu, Shui Luo, and Xiao Bai were constantly floating in the yellow sandstorm. They looked at the surrounding large halls that were destroyed in the sandstorm with great pity. Even the small halls around the center, about 10 of them, were all crushed in the sandstorm. Who knew what treasures were placed in them, but they were all scattered in the air. Look, a heaven crystal grade creation item. Shui Luo pointed in a direction, and Consort Yu also felt it. In the surrounding darkness, a heaven crystal grade creation item appeared. It was at least a grade 2 heaven crystal grade creation item. Chapter 1305. Due to the darkness around them, no one could see anything with their eyes. They could only rely on their spiritual senses to sense. Although the storm around them wasn't fatal, it was still very violent, reducing the range of everyone's spiritual senses to the lowest. Even someone as strong as Consort, you could only sense the situation within 100 feet, and it wasn't very clear. She only knew that within 100 feet, there were only her, Shui Luo, and Little White. Everyone else had been blown away by the storm. Within this range, the large sand palace was destroyed by the storm. An item of creation that was at least heavenly crystal grade level 2 was swept to Consort Yu's side. Amidst the raging storm, Concubine Yu raised her hand to activate the 9 Nether Divine Script and the Immortal Divine Script. The power of the black and white Divine Script blended together, and the two completely opposite forces fused together perfectly. She slowly moved towards the place where the thing of creation was. Even though the sandstorm formed by the gold element primordial power was wreaking havoc, she could still move forward slowly. Under the black and white defensive barrier, she, Shui Luo, and Little White didn't suffer any injuries. Previously, when the yellow sandstorm vortex and the eye of the storm collided, most of the power that erupted was only a one-time eruption. Therefore, after the eruption, even if the remaining storm was fierce, it would not be able to kill an expert like Yufei. Looks like we're too unlucky. Shui Luo and Little White were looking forward to Consort Yu getting the item of creation, but they only heard Consort Yu sigh. The storm blew the item of creation away. I can't sense its location now. This wasn't good news, but there was more bad news to come. There's a sand statue with many wings that was blown over by the storm. Watch your steps. Concubine Yu's warning was very quick, but the speed at which the winged stone statue was blown over was even faster. A huge winged, strange race stone statue crashed into the black and white defensive barrier with a loud bang. The yellow sand-winged stone statue had the strength of a 7th phase dominator. Of course, the storm couldn't destroy it. At that moment, it slammed into the black and white defensive barrier. The dozens of wings on its body suddenly rose up, and a metal-type primordial power instantly burst forth, transforming into countless feather blades that slashed towards you phase black and white defensive barrier. Every one of these wings was exceptionally sharp, and they were able to easily cut a few cracks on the black and white defensive barrier. "You're looking for death." Concubine, you shouted and waved her hand lightly. The netherworld divine runes roared out and pierced towards the bamboo pole of the winged stone statue like a sharp blade of darkness. However, the stone statue wasn't one to be bullied. At this moment, the wings on its body were completely unfurled, forming a defensive barrier that blocked Concubine use 9 Nether Divine Runes dagger. If there were 3 of these stone statues together, they could pose some threat to me. But in the storm, it won't be so easy for these stone statues to form a formation. If a single stone statue comes at me, it's just sending itself to death. Concubine, you chuckled, but the sharp knife with 9 Nether Divine Runes instantly emitted a dazzling white light, and it easily broke through the defensive barrier of the wings like a hot knife through butter. Then, the black and white sharp knife stabbed down and completely cut off the sand statue's dozen pairs of wings. They turned into pure gold element primordial power and completely collapsed. "Kill!" After Concubine, you shouted. Another 9 nether sharp blade condensed and blossomed with white immortal light. It fused into a black and white sharp blade and slashed down with extreme speed, cutting the bamboo pole body of the yellow sand winged stone statue into 2. Without any hesitation, Concubine, you decisively used her killer move, completely shattering the yellow sand winged stone statue. Just as Consort, you said, if there were 3 of these 7th phase ruler level stone statues working together and forming a formation, even Consort, you would be trapped. But now that the storm had come and disrupted the formation of the sand statues, it was impossible for them to work together. As a result, there was no threat to consort you at all. The power of the sandstorm was getting weaker and weaker. However, it was still not something that Long Yu and Red Oriole could casually come out. Unless Long Yu summoned the Nether Void Dragon Blade, Long Yu would still die if he were to face the sandstorm head-on. But at least they could be sure that as long as they followed Consort Yu, their lives wouldn't be in too much danger. This way, Long Yu and Red Oriole could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Follow me. Pay attention to the surroundings at all times. If there are any stone statues, kill them. If there are any creations, take them. Don't waste any time. After Consort Yu finished speaking, she took the initiative to advance in a certain direction. Within the storm, Shuel Luo and Little White followed, maintaining themselves within Consort Yu's black and white defensive barrier. This way, they could conserve stamina, and the 3 of them moving together could prevent any accident from happening and being left behind. When the storm completely swept over, everyone saw that over 100 yellow sand, multi-winged stone statues were condensed by the formation and then born. Now, the surrounding area could be surrounded by 7th phase great ruler statues at any time, so they had to be on guard, especially now that the violent storm had separated them from the others. They didn't know where the others were, so the chances of the stone statues appearing in the surroundings were actually higher. The 3 of them continuously moved slowly within the storm. They encountered 3 stone statues in a row, which were quickly taken care of by them. Then, they finally found a creations floating within the storm. 3rd rank. Consort Yu caught up to the creations and took it. She was slightly disappointed. This one clearly wasn't the one she sensed at the beginning. However, it was better than nothing. If they continued to search within the storm, they might be able to find more. The value of a Heaven Crystal grade 3rd level creation was already very high. It was only because she had higher expectations that Yu Fei was a little disappointed about it. The 3 of them continued to search within the storm. Along the way, they continuously destroyed more and more sand statues. Very soon, they encountered a total of over 20 sand statues. They were all completely taken care of by the 3 of them, and it was extremely easy. As for creations, Consort Yu finally found a total of 3. One of them was 2nd rank Heaven Crystal rank, and the other 2 were 3rd rank Heaven Crystal rank. Altogether, They were worth at least 20 million army merit points. If it was somewhere else, it would be impossible to find 3 such creations so easily. Of course, all of this was obtained by Consort You and the others risking their lives. When the storm erupted just now, everyone was almost done, for 3 heaven crystal level creation items were not a lot. Or rather, compared to what the large yellow sand palace originally had, it was only a small portion of it. In the storm, many things had been blown away, and no one knew where they were. To be able to find these 3 was already very good luck. Other than that, Consort You also found an elixir bottle. This elixir bottle wasn't damaged, even in the violent metal-type origin power storm, because there was a defensive array engraved on its surface. The defensive array's range was only the elixir bottle. The area was very small, so its defensive ability was very strong, allowing it to survive the storm. After opening the elixir bottle, Consort You found 3 nature-defying elixirs inside. It was obvious that they were the work of the Sufferers Alliance. This was because these 3 nature-defying elixirs could be consumed by any race and absorb their power. 3 Gung Metal Divine Pills. I've heard of this nature-defying elixir before. Just one of them can increase the power of all the divine characters derived from metal-type origin power, and it's an additional increase. Consort You's eyes lit up. The Netherworld Divine Script is a type of metal-type origin power. It's useful to me. Whitey and Shueluo glanced at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. Their divine runes weren't derived from the metal element's primordial force, so the Gung Metal Godly Pill was useless to them. It was the same for Red Oriole. The blood-color divine script that the Blood Demon tribe cultivated was a type of light-type divine script. It had nothing to do with metal-type origin power. But there's no need for us to show this to others. We'll split it among ourselves. Little White and Shueluo raised this question at almost the same time. In such a storm, everyone was fighting alone. What they could obtain depended on luck and their own strength. In such a situation, no one would be willing to share the things they obtain with others. You guys can take the Heavenly Crystal Grade creation item. I only need 1 Gung Metal Divine Pill. Long Yu took the initiative to say this when he heard the people outside distributing the items. Red Oriole also said, I also want 1 Gung Metal Divine Pill. Shueluo was a little puzzled. Little sister, what do you want the Gung Metal Divine Pill for? None of your business. I just want it. Red Oriole harumphed, not bothering to say anything more to Shueluo. In fact, she wanted the Gung Metal Divine Pills for Long Yu, because Long Yu could use the Devil Dust Heart to reconstruct his fleshly body. He could completely absorb the medicinal power of 2 similar pills. The effect of 2 Gung Metal Divine Pills was absolutely terrifying. The reason why Long Yu had raised his request so casually was mainly because most of the people present were familiar with him. Apart from Xiao Bai, the human youth Xiao Bai had a good impression of Long Yu and had always been friendly with him. Of course, the most important thing was that Shueluo and Little White didn't need the Gung Metal Divine Pill, and Consort You only needed 1. Under such circumstances, Long Yu naturally took the initiative to ask for 2 Gung Metal Divine Pills. Then, Consort You took the remaining Gung Metal Divine Pill. As for the 3 Heavenly Crystal Grade creation items, they were all given to Shueluo and Little White. Little White took a 2nd grade Heavenly Crystal Grade 1, while Shueluo took 2 3rd grade Heavenly Crystal Grade 1s. The value was about the same. Consort You suffered the most. She clearly contributed the most, however, Consort You didn't care too much. To her, the effect of a Gung Metal Divine Pill was far beyond any power of creation. This was because she didn't lack the power of creation anymore. Consort You, who was already a rank 7 Dominator, wanted to break through and step into the demigod level was too far away. Under such circumstances, a special heaven-defying pill like the Gung Metal Divine Pill could improve her strength. Chapter 1306. Long Yu got 2 Gung Gene Divine Pills as he wished. This was the same as the Demonic Speed Pill and Void Speed Pill that he had taken before. They were all heaven-defying pills that could significantly improve the strength of the cultivator. The 9 nether divine text that long you had comprehended was derived from the power of the gold origin. Taking the Gung-Jin divine pill could enhance the ultimate power of the 9 nether divine text. If he absorbed both, the power of Long Yu's 9 nether divine text would at least increase several times. Of course, now was not the time for him to take the Gung-Jin divine pill, because everyone was still in a dangerous state. Although the storm around them had gradually subsided, there were still many winged stone statues. And as the storm gradually subsided, the winged stone statues began to form groups with each other. If they encountered 3 winged stone statues walking together, it would be difficult for Consort Yu to escape alone. She needed Shualuo and Xiaobai's help to deal with them. What made everyone most uneasy was that they had not met other people until now. They did not know how far the others had been blown away by the storm. They could only wait for the storm to completely stop. Now, the range of Consort Yu's spiritual awareness was still only about 100 feet, which was a lot further than before. But compared to usual, she still felt like she had become blind. Under such circumstances, they had to be extremely cautious with every step they took. If they were to encounter 6 winged sandstone statues that had gathered together, then it would be difficult to deal with them. Fortunately, such an unfortunate thing did not happen to them. As the yellow sandstorm gradually dissipated, its strength gradually weakened to the level of an ordinary yellow sandstorm. They only needed a layer of defense barrier to withstand it. If the yellow sandstorm shock wave was 100 at its strongest, then now the destructive power of the storm was only 1. The most difficult period was finally over. There's someone over there. Soon, Consort Yu was the first to detect the presence of other people in one direction. She immediately led everyone in that direction. When they were close, they could see each other clearly with the naked eye. It turned out to be Boss Bear and Su Yuqing. Right now, the two of them were in an extremely sorry state. They were currently dealing with a winged stone statue made of yellow sand. Beside them were the remains of 2 other stone statues. It seemed that they had encountered the combined forces of 3 stone statues. Boss Bear and Su Yuqing joined hands and spent a lot of effort to get rid of 2 of the 3 stone statues. When there was only 1 left, the 2 of them didn't have much strength left. Fortunately, 1 stone statue alone couldn't pose any threat to them. A sharp blade of the 9 nether pierced through the air. Just as it was about to land on the stone statue with many wings, white immortal light bloomed, turning it into a black and white sharp blade. The black and white dagger came so suddenly that the multi-winged stone statue was not prepared in advance. Just like that, the dagger cut through more than a dozen pairs of translucent yellow sand wings, and then the dagger fell, instantly shattering its bamboo body. Concubine, you struck from afar and killed the winged stone statue. Big Bear and Su Yuqing were separated by the hazy yellow sand that filled the sky. When they saw the scene, they were both delighted. No matter what, seeing others again under such circumstances gave them some peace of mind. At the very least, a huge weight had been lifted off their shoulders. There was strength in numbers. This saying was not without reason. Soon, the 2 sides met up. When the other side discovered that Long Yu, Red Oriole, and the others were still there, they breathed a sigh of relief. In the eyes of Big Bear and Su Yuqing, Long Yu is definitely not someone to be underestimated. Let's go find the others. After a brief discussion, they decided to travel together. After all, if they were separated in such a situation, they might not be able to reunite. Although traveling together would take them longer, if they encountered any danger, they could deal with it together. And both sides tacitly did not mention anything about their gains. This was almost an unspoken rule. When they were separated, the gains they obtained belonged to the cultivators themselves. There was no need to show it to others, and there was no need to share it with others. It was clearly for the best that they did not mention this topic. After all, everyone had come here for the good stuff. Some things would be meaningless if they were revealed. Everyone kept searching as they rapidly traversed through the yellow sandstorm. At this point, the yellow sandstorm would not weaken any further. It maintained this intensity, and the range of Consort Yu's spiritual awareness gradually recovered. It went from the initial range of 100 feet to 1,000 feet, and then to the current range of 10,000 feet. Finally, it recovered to a range of 30 to 40 kilometers. At this point, Consort Yu could sense what was around her. Be it natural treasures like the creations, the winged stone statues, or the other people who had been swept away by the sandstorm, Consort Yu could mostly sense their existence. Dark Thunder, Marrow Soul, and Elder Yang gathered together and did not encounter any great danger. However, the situation of the remaining two people was not so good. One was Situ Tianhe, and the other was the son of Elder Yang's old friend. When Consort Yu met up with Dark Thunder, Marrow Soul, and Elder Yang, she sensed Situ Tianhe's aura. This guy was very unlucky. When the shockwave of the sandstorm had just arrived, he had been swept into the center of the strongest sandstorm and torn to pieces. There was no suspense at all. Only the remains of the absolute beginning divine item and the small world were left. Consort Yu and the others realized that they were Situ Tianhe's belongings. As for his physical body, it had been completely torn apart by the sandstorm. There was also the son of Elder Yang's old friend. He had previously established a spiritual connection with Elder Yang. However, when everyone found him, he was besieged by two winged stone statues. He was already seriously injured and on the verge of death. The terrifying yellow sand formed by the metal attribute absolute beginning power had already seeped into his body and destroyed all his internal organs. It had also eroded his dantian and small world, corroding his 7 great innate remarkable fruits. Elder Yang could still heal the heavy injuries on his physical body. However, he could not do anything about the damage to his small world. When everyone found the son of his old friend, Elder Yang immediately burst into tears. "Am I going to die?" Old friend Yang's son struggled to say something when he saw the crowd surrounding him and killing the two winged yellow sand statues. His eyes were clear and bright. He knew very well that he could not hold on any longer. "You won't die," Elder Yang cried, but his tone was extremely firm. He raised his hand and used the innate remarkable skill of heaven and earth reversal, enveloping his son's physical body and allowing him to recover quickly. Immediately after, Elder Yang stored him in his small world. Because he would definitely be swept away by the sandstorm, it was impossible for his physical body to recover. Right now, the kid had to recuperate. Although the innate remarkable fruits in his small world had been corroded, it was not enough to take his life. As long as his physical body was healed, surviving wouldn't be a problem. However, now that all 7 of the connate fruits of magic had been corroded, it would be impossible for him to continue cultivating. All he could do was survive. His martial realm would plummet, and even ordinary imperial emperors or cultivators in the divine ability secret realm would be able to easily bully him, let alone great sovereigns. To a former 5th stage great ruler, such a situation was most likely worse than death. Thus, not long after, Elder Yang's expression dimmed. He said to everyone, he couldn't take the blow and committed suicide. There's nothing we can do to help him recover his innate, remarkable fruits. Everyone fell silent. No one said anything. Under these circumstances, there was nothing they could say. Comfort? That probably wouldn't be of much use. Moreover, Elder Yang was an expert of the older generation, after all. He still had that much mental fortitude. It was impossible for him to immerse himself in grief for too long. After all, everyone was still in a dangerous situation. Everyone's team had lost members once again. Apart from Red Oriole and Long Yu, there had been 11 people at the beginning. Along the way, Situ Qingyi and Situ Tianhe, the 2 Ice Bear demonic race members, had died. Now, Elder Yang's old friend's son had also died. Only 8 people remained. Consort Yu, Xiao Bai, and Shui Luo, Xiaolei, Marrow Soul, and Elder Yang, as well as Elder Xiong and Su Yuqing, a total of 8 people. They were the remaining powerful forces of the group. As for Long Yu and Red Oriole, they were relying on them to move around in this foreign race ruin. They could only be of some use at specific times. After another loss of members, the overall combat strength of the group had been greatly reduced. There are only 8 of us left now. Should we continue? Elder Yang was silent for a moment, then raised his head and asked. The others were also pondering this question. Clearly, they were still not satisfied, but if they continued, it would be easier for them to encounter danger with too few people. I haven't obtained anything useful yet. Of course we should continue. If any of you don't want to continue, you can leave first. I can understand, Su Yuqing said indifferently. Su Yuqing said faintly. It seemed that she had already made her decision. Then, those who want to continue, raise your hands to vote. Consort, you couldn't be bothered to say more and directly raised her hand. Xiaobai and Shui Luo naturally raised their hands as well. Su Yuqing and Elder Xiong did the same. On the other hand, Elder Yang, Xia Lei, and Marosol seemed a little hesitant. It seemed that these 3 fellows had a good harvest in the storm. Long Yu and Red Oriole exchanged a glance, thinking the same thing. After hesitating for a while, the 3 of them finally raised their hands together. There were quite a lot of treasures hidden in the ancient ruins of the other race. The value of a heaven crystal grade creation item was equivalent to half a year of hard work in the outside world, and it was an amount that they could only save up by not eating or drinking. Now that there was a chance to obtain more, they naturally wouldn't give up. Even if it was dangerous, hadn't they already survived? Chapter 1307. After making the decision, Long Yu continued to scout ahead. Everyone returned to the Netherworld Dragon Dagger. The Netherworld Dragon Dagger was the easiest to use in a storm like this, and it didn't need to consume much energy. In front of everyone, there were constantly 9 Nether Hunters scouting the way. They were at least 50 miles ahead of everyone. Soon, everyone discovered that not only the vicinity, but even 50 miles and 100 miles away were already filled with yellow sandstorms. There was no quiet place at all. Due to the explosion of the eye of the storm, all the void nearby was shrouded in the storm, turning it into a chaotic scene. The limit of the 9 Nether Hunters was also reduced to 50 miles, and then they would be completely destroyed in the storm. As for the Ice God clan that Long Yu had placed in the space inside the 9 Nether Hunters, of course, it would die along with the 9 Nether Hunters. There was no way for them to survive. After the previous experience, everyone moved forward more cautiously. They also asked Long Yu to release the 9 Nether Hunters in 4 directions to scout. Once something happened in one direction, they could immediately change to another direction. It seems like something is wrong. Consort Yu suddenly frowned, causing everyone's heart to skip a beat. They had a bad feeling. What's wrong? Shui Luo asked Consort Yu. Among everyone present, Consort Yu's spiritual sense had the furthest range. After adding the light of balance, she could now sense the storm within a range of 70 to 80 miles. Consort Yu frowned. More than 70 miles behind us, a spatial barrier made of water element power suddenly appeared. It spanned across the sky and sealed off the entire path of retreat. It's okay. Long Yu can deal with this spatial barrier. Boss Xiong, who was at the side, was very confident in Long Yu as he chuckled. The key problem is that it's not the first layer. Concubine Yu raised her head and glanced at the others around her. Just now, about 30 miles away, a similar space barrier had appeared, but I didn't say much. This is the second layer. Could it be that the shock wave from the eye of the storm triggered some kind of restriction, causing the entire ancient ruins to change? Shui Luo suddenly thought of this possibility and couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive. If that was the case, the rest of them would be in danger. Not to mention exploring the ruins, it would be extremely difficult for them to escape. I think it's very likely. What should we do? Elder Yang frowned, and the wrinkles on his forehead became even more pronounced. He had originally wanted to retreat, but now, even retreating had become a problem. If they didn't have Long Yu, it would take them a long time to break through the water-type absolute beginning barrier. If they were surrounded by yellow sand or winged stone statues, they wouldn't be able to escape. I found something. Just as everyone was hesitating and wavering, Long Yu suddenly said, "There's a yellow sand palace up ahead, but it's different from the ones we've seen before. The overall style of this yellow sand palace is rather eerie. I don't know what's going on." Everyone immediately shifted their gazes over. In front of them, in the image transmitted by the Nine Nether Hunter, there was indeed another yellow sand palace in the distance. The overall style of this yellow sand palace seemed to be a little gloomier than the previous one, and the defenses were a little tighter. It could be seen that this yellow sand palace had also been affected by the shockwave from the explosion of the Eye of the Storm, but it was not damaged. It wasn't because the shockwave weakened after reaching there, but because the defensive barrier around it was stronger than the other yellow sand palaces, and it actually blocked the shockwave. Long Yu was sure that the location of this eerie yellow sand palace would still suffer the same intensity of the shock wave from the Eye of the Storm as before. But now, the yellow sand palace was empty, and there was no yellow sandstorm around it. All the metal-type absolute beginning power was blocked outside the defensive barrier. It was obvious that this was a very important place. It's an important place, and there might be some good things inside. How about it? I think we can't miss this place. Su Yuqing's eyes lit up, and she seemed eager to give it a try. I think it's better to be cautious. That defensive barrier is so strong that it can actually block the shockwave from the Eye of the Storm. We have to consider how to rush back after we enter, Dark Thunder said in a deep voice, and his tone was extremely solemn. Perhaps it was because they had already obtained a lot of good things, but Dark Thunder, Marrow Soul, and Old Yang were now more cautious in their actions. To them, it was no longer worth risking their lives. I think it's better to go and take a look. Who knows, there might be more things inside than before. Boss Xiong laughed heartily. He could tell that the three of them were worried, so he said those words to tempt them and provoke the greed in their hearts. This sentence was very interesting. Although the trio knew that Boss Xiong wanted to drag them down with him, they couldn't help but think that they might be able to obtain more. Thus, the final outcome of the discussion was decided. In a short period of time, everyone made their decision and entered the eerie yellow sand palace. The third layer. When everyone finally arrived at the spatial defensive barrier around the yellow sand palace, Consort Yu's voice sounded again. She said solemnly, "There are a total of 3 water-type spatial barriers behind us. There are also some winged stone statues that are constantly condensing in the distance. They seem to be rushing in our direction." As expected, the restrictions of the entire ancient alien ruins have been triggered. What should we do now? The expressions of the others became even more solemn. No matter what, we can definitely escape. We have to explore this yellow sand palace in front of us. Everyone looked at each other and saw the decision in each other's eyes. Even if Dark Thunder, Old Yang, and Marrow Soul had already arrived in front of the yellow sand palace, they had no reason to retreat. No one wanted to retreat. They all approached the yellow sand palace. The powerful spatial defensive barrier was the same as before. It was only used to withstand the yellow sandstorm and did not prevent them from entering. Thus, they easily entered the barrier. Then, a ghastly aura rolled out from the yellow sand palace and completely drowned them. This aura, what a thick aura of death. What is inside? Everyone could not help but exclaim. When they were outside, they only felt a little gloomy. But when they entered the defensive barrier, the aura suddenly increased by 100 times. It was even to the extent that it could affect the mental state of cultivators. Such a thick aura of death. I have never seen such a thick aura of death. Even in the battlefield of the alien races, Shuel Luo's eyes were filled with shock as he murmured. What kind of place was the battlefield of the alien races? At every moment, countless living beings died there. Countless corpses of experts from different races were buried there. The aura of death lingered all year round and could not dissipate. But now, the aura of death in this yellow sand palace was even thicker than in the battlefield of the alien races. It was obvious that there was something extremely terrifying inside. Let the 9 Nether Hunter go in and have a look? Long Yu suggested. In Consort Yu's pocket dimension, he did not feel the thick aura of death for the time being. At this moment, all he wanted was to quickly deal with this yellow sand palace and leave the alien race's ruins. After all, the restrictions of the entire alien race's ruins had been triggered by the shockwave of the Eye of the Storm. If they did not leave now, it would be too late. Hold on. How about we blast open this spatial barrier first? Saleh turned back to look at the spatial defensive barrier that they had just passed through and said very cautiously, "That's right. If there is any danger, we can save some time. We don't need to spend so much effort to break through this spatial barrier." Maruhan also nodded with a grim tone, expressing his agreement to this approach. No one had any objections. Long Yu finally came out of Consort Yu's pocket dimension and prepared to cooperate with everyone to use the path of 9 underworlds to break through this spatial barrier. The moment he came out of Consort Yu's pocket dimension, he felt an extremely thick aura of death. It swept towards him from all directions and even surrounded him to the point where it was difficult to breathe. Fortunately, Long Yu covered his entire body with the 9 underworld's divine characters and immediately felt much better. Perhaps the 9 underworld's divine characters also had the effect of absorbing and shielding this aura of death. This allowed Long Yu to breathe a sigh of relief. Immediately after, everyone began to attack the spatial barrier. Long Yu also activated the path of 9 underworlds. A dark path rapidly extended out and landed in the area where everyone else was attacking. The formidable power of disintegrating the spatial divine characters was instantly displayed. Even though Long Yu only had the cultivation of a lower-level ruler, when he used this move, the degree of destruction it caused to the spatial barrier was actually equivalent to the power of 3/5 or 6th level rulers. With Long Yu's participation, the speed at which the spatial barrier was being destroyed increased by half. It was clear that he was indeed a cut above everyone else in this area. If Long Yu's cultivation rose to the level of a sovereign, the speed at which he disintegrated the spatial divine characters would definitely surpass the sum of everyone else present. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn past, the extremely tough spatial barrier was blasted open by everyone's attacks. At this moment, there would be no more shock waves from the Eye of the Storm, so it didn't matter if the barrier was destroyed. After all, there was only one Eye of the Storm. Let the 9 underworld's hunters scout the way. If there's any danger, retreat immediately. At this moment, everyone finally had Long Yu take action. Under Long Yu's control, the 2 9 underworld's hunters flew towards the entrance of the awe-inspiring palace. At the entrance of the palace, there are also 2 yellow sand statues with many wings. However, these 2 statues were completely black, giving off an even more sinister aura. In the next moment, the 2 9 underworld's hunters placed 2 ice gods in them and flew towards the open entrance of the awe-inspiring palace. Chapter 1308. Everyone was watching with bated breath. Once the 9 Nether Hunter triggered any restrictions, they would be able to react immediately. Whether it was to fight or flee, they had to make a decision as soon as possible. But to everyone's surprise, the 2 9th Nether Hunters didn't trigger any restrictions after entering the hall, and they stepped into it smoothly. There are no restrictions at all. Everyone felt that it was a little unbelievable. However, as the 9 Nether Hunter continued to fly in and disappeared in front of everyone, there was still no movement in the hall. This situation was something that no one had expected. What should we do now? Many people looked at Consort Yu. Consort Yu looked at Long Yu and said, "Continue to let the 9 Nether Hunter move forward and see what's in this hall. We're not in a hurry to enter. We must be fully prepared." Long Yu nodded and continued to urge the 9 Nether Hunter to move forward. Unfortunately, the hall was pitch black, and others couldn't see what was in it through the images. The 9 Nether Hunter didn't have any spiritual sense, so it could only transmit images to Long Yu. In a situation where it was pitch black, Long Yu didn't know what was in the surroundings of the 9 Nether Hunter. All he could do now was to let the 9 Nether Hunter continue to move forward and see if it would trigger any restrictions. He also wanted to find a place with light to see what was in the surroundings. As Long Yu let the 9 Nether Hunter continue to move forward, a bit of light slowly appeared in front of them. It was emitted from a kind of luminous stone. These stones were embedded in the stone walls of the hall, and the entire passage was filled with a faint light. This light was completely faint and eerie white. Not only did it not brighten the surrounding environment, but it also made it look even more eerie and terrifying. The Nine Nether Hunter was finally able to use the faint white light to transmit the surrounding scene to everyone outside. When everyone saw the scene, they immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Cage after cage actually appeared around the Nine Nether Hunter. These cages were all condensed from the strongest absolute beginning energy and were reinforced by some kind of profound array. Even a 7th-stage sovereign expert wouldn't be able to break through. Of course, these cages seemed to have loosened a little. After all, no one knew how many years had passed. No matter how powerful the array was, it was impossible for it to remain intact for tens of millions of years. The cages were not surprising. What was surprising was the things that were imprisoned in these cages. In each cage, the things imprisoned were different. However, all of them were skeletons of various forms, and there were even some strange-looking shriveled corpses. Alien races. These are all alien races imprisoned here by the multi-winged race. The expressions of many changed abruptly, and they revealed expressions of wild joy when they saw the corpses and skeletons. Because there were many skeletons and corpses of the outsiders here that they'd never seen or heard of before. Such things had extremely high research value for the army on the battlefield. If they could bring them back, every skeleton and every corpse could be exchanged for an extremely high amount of battlefield army merit. The Nine Nether Hunter should have already walked to the center of this palace. After all, this palace isn't big. It seems that there are a total of 10 cages here, and they just happen to be imprisoning the skeletons of 10 different kinds of alien races. Longyou said he saw that the passageway in front of him had already reached the end. These skeletons of the alien races should be the things stored in this palace. Without a doubt, the awe-inspiring aura of this palace was emitted by these skeletons. From this, it could be seen that these skeletons of the alien races were definitely not ordinary existences when they were alive. A simple guess was that these skeletons were all the skeletons of demigod existences. This was because even the corpses of 7th-stage sovereigns couldn't be preserved for tens of millions of years after death. It was impossible for only bones to exist. Moreover, if only 7th-stage sovereigns had died inside, it would be impossible for the entire palace to be filled with such a dense, awe-inspiring aura. 10 demigods must have been imprisoned and died inside, which was why the entire palace was so awe-inspiring. I didn't expect to have such a harvest. Since the Nine Nether Hunter can go in, it shouldn't be a problem for us either. Once we go in and break the cages, we can take out those skeletons. Boss Bear's eyes lit up. He was very clear that as long as this operation was successful, it would definitely be the biggest harvest this time. The demigod skeletons of unknown alien races were much more valuable than the heaven crystal creation. Why go through so much trouble? We're in a hurry now. Why don't we directly put the entire palace into the small world and then slowly study these demigod skeletons after we get out? How about that? Little White, however, made another suggestion and said to Consort You, I've tried, but I can't do it. Consort You shook her head. The awe-inspiring aura of this palace prevents me from using the power of the world to envelop it completely. It's impossible to put it into the small world. Since Consort You can't do it, the rest of us can't do it either. It seems that we can only enter and take out the demigod skeletons. The others also felt that it was a pity, but when there was only one way left, they did not need to hesitate so much. Very soon, everyone was ready to enter. I think we'd better move faster, Su Yuqing said with a slight frown. I feel that the awe-inspiring aura seems to be beginning to invade my small world. If we stay here for too long, it might cause some negative effects to our small world. I feel it too. Elder Yang also nodded. We do need to be fast. Don't dawdle. Let's go. The sooner we finish, the sooner we can leave. Otherwise, when the barriers of the entire alien relic are completely opened, It will be too late for us to leave, even if we want to. Everyone did not waste any time. Following closely behind Consort Yu, they broke into the palace of yellow sand that was enshrouded in an awe-inspiring aura. Just like what Long Yu had detected with the hunters of Tartarus, they did not touch any barriers, but the spreading awe-inspiring aura made them all very uncomfortable. Long Yu returned to Consort Yu's small world. He felt fine, but he also found that Consort Yu's small world seemed to be invaded by the awe-inspiring aura, which made it a bit weird. Thankfully, the situation was not very serious. Also, Consort Yu could cover her body with the divine language of Tartarus to resist the awe-inspiring aura. It was not hard to imagine that the other people's situation would be even worse. However, faced with the demigod skeletons of unknown aliens, nobody could resist the temptation, including Long Yu. Any of the skeletons could be exchanged for more than 10 million battlefield honor in the army on the battlefield. How many training resources could they be exchanged for? As long as Long Yu could get one of them, he would be able to exchange for an advanced source of holy spirits, which would increase the recovery speed of the natural spiritual energy in his small world by 10 times. That reminded Long Yu and Red Oriole of an unknown corpse that was frozen in the remains of the demigod's small world. It was in existence in an ice coffin, which gave them a sense of awe-inspiring aura. It was probably the corpse of an unknown species. If it was, it would be invaluable. No wonder I sensed the awe-inspiring aura at that time. Would all demigod experts release such an aura after they die? Long Yu thought to himself, but he was not sure. Such a question was not something that he could consider clearly yet. Very soon, everybody reached the center of the palace of yellow sand. Then, they saw the 2 hunters of Tartarus that had stopped there. Nothing unexpected happened. It seemed that most of the defenses in this place had failed. Probably, the defenses that the multi-winged race had set up in this palace were all aimed at the inside, which was to prevent the demigods of unknown species from escaping. They did not foresee that somebody would break in and take away the corpses of the demigods in the future. 10 cages, 10 different unknown races. There are indeed countless alien races in this world. Our human race and the demon race live in a remote corner and can only deal with those alien races all year round. I don't know when we will be able to break into the real cultivation world of the big world. Illuminated by the cold light, everybody glanced at the 10 cages in the palace with different feelings. Of course, most of them were feelings about the vastness of this world. The multi-winged race was a very mysterious alien species in the first place. 40 million years ago, they invaded the territory of the demon race and never appeared again after they were defeated by the demon race. Now, there were 10 corpses of demigods of alien species that they had never seen before. Could they be alien species near the territory of the multi-winged race? Where was the territory of the multi-winged race? Did the multi-winged race still exist in the great world? Everything was a mystery, and it was not a mystery that a mere great ruler could solve. Even a demigod would find it extremely difficult to understand everything. Don't think too much. Just open those cages and take away the corpses. Shui Luo urged everybody and walked to one of the cage of corpses first. Then, bloody divine symbols appeared all over his body as he attacked the cage that was made of the origin power of the metal class. Those cages were very sturdy in the first place. They could even imprison main demigods. However, after tens of millions of years, even those cages were not as sturdy as they used to be. After the unknown demigods of alien species died, those cages became more and more fragile, as if they were rusted. Everybody dispersed and started to deal with those cages. Red Oriole and Long Yu did the same. But it was a pity that those cages were not made of the origin power of the water class. Long Yu could not directly dismantle them with the Path of 9 Nether. If he used other powers, Long Yu was still too weak. Chapter 1309. There were exactly 10 alien cages in total, which was the same number as the number of them. Each of them could have one. However, These cages were not so easy to destroy. The first to destroy the cages was, of course, Consort You, who was the strongest among them. She condensed a sharp black dagger, and as the white divine light burst out from it, the black and white color eroded the cage of the primordial force. After half an hour, Consort You broke the cage first. Then, the power of her world passed through the cage and enveloped the skeleton of an unknown demigod in the cage. That unknown demigod of hers was a pure skeleton. However, different from that of humans and demons, the skeleton was blue, which looked extremely weird and creepy. Consort You didn't think too much. It was already dead anyway. No matter how creepy it was, she didn't need to be afraid of it. Soon, the power of Consort You's world enveloped the blue skeleton and sent it directly into her small world. Then, Consort You didn't waste any time. She looked back and saw that Long You basically couldn't do anything to the cage. She pursed her lips and chuckled. Then, she turned around and raised her hand to help Long You. The black and white divine light of the 9 serenities bombarded the cage of the primordial force in front of Long You in the blink of an eye, corroding and destroying it at an extremely high speed. The speed was more than 100 times faster than Long Yu's dragon breath of the 9 serenities. As expected of Consort You, she's so powerful. My level of martial arts is still too low after all. Long Yu sighed. He felt a little defeated, but his cultivation was too low. He was able to follow the others all the way to the ancient era's ruins, and was still able to play a role. It was already quite good. Other cultivators of the same realm felt that it was impossible for them to do what he did. With Consort Yu's help, another half an hour passed, and the cage of the primordial force in front of Long Yu was finally destroyed. Then, without any hesitation, Long Yu summoned the power of his world and covered the creepy corpse of the unknown demigod in the cage. The corpse in Long Yu's cage was not a skeleton. It must be noted that not all the aliens had bones in their bodies. While storing the corpse into his small world, Long Yu observed it carefully, only to discover that it was a corpse made of iron. The demigod's entire body was made of metal, and it was a metal that Long Yu didn't know and had never seen before. Its entire body was reflecting gray light. Although it had been too long, the corpse did not decay at all. However, there was indeed no vitality in it. Such a demigod was definitely dead. Compared to other corpses, the corpse of Long Yu's metal demigod did not have much creepy air, which reassured him a lot. It was possible that the nature of this demigod was different from that of other demigods. Consort Yu soon went to help Red Oriole. Red Oriole broke the cage much faster than Long Yu did. Also, with Consort Yu's help, she was only a little later than Long Yu and broke the cage. Also, it was not until this moment that the others began to break the cages. Consort Yu, on the other hand, had already broken 3 cages in total. Her speed indicated that she was much stronger than the others. After 1.5 hours, everybody stored the unknown alien corpses into their small worlds. Since there were 10 alien corpses in total, they did not argue about how to divide them. Long Yu and Red Oriole each took one, and the others did not bother to do anything else. The most important thing now was to evacuate from this place safely. Everybody had a corpse of an unknown alien, so the harvest from the primordial alien relic was already very good. There was no need to continue taking risks. At this moment, almost all the barriers in the primordial alien relic had been activated. Countless winged stone statues were coming at them. It had taken them a long time to destroy the cages. If they did not leave now, it would be too late. Let's go. At Concubine Yu's command, everyone followed behind her and quickly retreated out of the hall. Before this, Long Yu had already sent 2 9 nether hunters to the entrance of the palace to observe the situation. He could confirm that the surroundings were temporarily safe. However, it would soon become unsafe. A large group of winged stone statues, numbering in the tens of thousands, were gathering from all directions. In a short while, they would arrive near the outer layer of the palace's spatial defense barrier. Everyone filed out of the palace in a line. When they saw the densely packed winged stone statues, they all felt a chill run down their spines. Although these winged stone statues were all at the level of 3rd or 4th stage sovereigns and were not particularly strong, there were just too many of them. Even if a demigod expert was surrounded by tens of thousands of stone statues, it would still take a lot of effort to kill all of them. So when everyone saw this scene, the only thought in their minds was to escape. Fortunately, they had already broken a hole in the space defense barrier. At this time, everyone rushed out in a line and directly rushed into the raging yellow sandstorm outside. Long Yu had entered Consort Yu's small world. In this kind of situation, the void Nether Dragon Blade alone was definitely not enough. The others also had to stay outside to deal with any special circumstances. Spatial divine rune teleportation was completely forbidden in the primordial alien relic. No one could teleport. The only way was probably to rely on Long Yu's path of the Nine Nether. Unfortunately, Long Yu's cultivation was too low. If not for the spatial essence, his path of the Nine Nether wouldn't even be able to break through the ordinary spatial barriers of the primordial alien relic. Advance at full speed towards the entrance. If you encounter a spatial barrier, quickly destroy it. Don't hesitate. Everyone just attack one point. Following Xuel Luo's orders, everyone quickly moved forward and soon encountered the first layer of water element primordial energy barrier. If Long Yu was here, the speed of destruction would definitely be much faster. However, because the shockwave from the eye of the storm had caused the entire space to be filled with sand, Long Yu couldn't come out at all. He couldn't release the path of the Nine Nether in Consort Yu's small world, so it was impossible for it to land on the water element primordial energy barrier. Long Yu, come out. I'll be in charge of your defense, Consort Yu said solemnly to Long Yu. Then, she directly pulled Long Yu out of the small world. This gave Long Yu a fright. However, immediately after, Consort Yu raised her hand and a black and white defensive barrier appeared around Long Yu's body, protecting him. This kind of defensive barrier was only for the outside, not the inside. Even if it was wrapped around Long Yu could directly use the path of the Nine Nether to destroy the water element primordial energy barrier. Since that was the case, Long Yu didn't hesitate. He directly used the path of the Nine Nether, forcibly increasing the speed at which everyone broke through the water element primordial energy barrier by half. When everyone stopped at the water element primordial energy barrier, countless yellow sand-winged stone statues gathered towards them. Very quickly, they were all surrounded. Fortunately, because of Long Yu's participation, the speed at which everyone broke through the water element primordial energy barrier was just a little faster. The yellow sand-winged stone statues didn't really get close to them. Then, everyone rushed through the hole in the barrier and quickly advanced forward. The seals in the ancient foreign tribe ruins were all activated. Yellow sand rolled and filled the entire space. Groups of yellow sand-winged stone statues appeared everywhere. After everyone passed through the barrier, the stone statues also rushed over and continued to chase after them. There was still a large group of stone statues chasing after them. "Leave it to me," Dark Thunder said in a low voice. Along the way, he left behind one primordial lightning after another. Just like that, he placed the primordial lightning in the void. As they advanced forward, they quickly set up a primordial lightning formation. When the yellow sand-winged stone statues reached the primordial lightning formation, the entire lightning formation suddenly exploded. The terrifying metal element primordial energy produced an unparalleled destructive power. At least a few hundred yellow sand-winged stone statues were smashed to pieces. This slightly alleviated the pressure on everyone. The others weren't idle either. That included Long Yu. He continuously formed 9 Nether Hunters, then placed an Ice God race member inside. Then, he had the 9 Nether Hunters quickly advance in another direction, not caring about anything else. This way, he was able to attract the attention of some of the yellow sand-winged stone statues and lead them to other places. Balsoul raised his hand and released the foreign tribe puppets he raised. These foreign tribe puppets were actually all at the level of 4th and 5th rank dominators. Moreover, with Balsoul's own strength strengthening them, Their combat strength was definitely far superior to any yellow, sand-winged stone statue. However, he didn't release these puppets to fight. Instead, he released them to control them. For example, the Ice God Clan's puppet kept releasing ice cages to prevent the yellow, sand-winged stone statues in the distance from getting closer to them. Up, down, front, back, left, right? From every direction, there were countless winged yellow sandstone statues surrounding them. Everyone had to use all sorts of methods to maintain a distance from the winged yellow sandstone statues, not getting too close. Soon, the second layer of water element primordial energy barrier appeared in front of them. Just as everyone was about to break through the primordial energy barrier again, something unexpected happened. They saw a translucent giant body of the multi-winged race suddenly appear on the other side of the barrier. Those wings constantly trembled and directly shattered the entire primordial energy barrier. Demigod illusion formation. Oh no, quickly take a detour. Everyone was shocked. Being so close to the demigod illusion formation caused their hearts to tremble. The place where the demigod illusion appeared was actually less than 10 miles away from them. Chapter 1310. This sudden accident made everyone a little flustered. However, Consort Yu immediately said, "Don't panic too much. The demigod illusion array has already been damaged. It must have been damaged by the blast of the Eye of the Storm just now." Hearing that, everybody calmed down and observed carefully, only to discover that the demigod illusion was indeed incomplete. If it were a complete multi-winged race, there should have been dozens of pairs of wings on its back. However, the demigod illusion in front of them only had a dozen pairs of wings on one side, and the other side was obviously incomplete. That was because the demigod illusion array was partly shattered by the blast of the Eye of the Storm, resulting in the demigod illusion that was condensed being incomplete. Then what do we do? Even if it's an incomplete demigod illusion, we might not be able to. Shueluo gnashed his teeth. Sweat began to appear on his forehead as he stared at the demigod illusion in front of him. The demigod illusion of the multi-winged race shattered the barrier of the primordial force in front of them as soon as it appeared. Then, it surrounded them together with the other winged statues. Of course, the number of winged statues that gathered from the direction of the demigod illusion was far less than the number that came from other directions, but the demigod illusion alone was enough for them to deal with. There's no other way. We can only try it. Consort Yu analyzed calmly. Right now, there are too many winged statues in other directions. It's very difficult for us to pass through. Besides, we don't know if there will be demigod illusion arrays in other directions. It's not worth the risk. On the contrary, this is an opportunity for us. The demigod illusion array here means that there should be no more in this direction. The multi-winged race has set up defense barriers, so they won't set up two demigod illusion arrays on the same route. As long as we break through the demigod illusion, we should be able to reach the exit safely. Consort Yu's words were agreed with by most of the others. A few, such as Dark Thunder and Marwin, slightly frowned, but they did not say anything. Elder Yang asked, "How are we going to break through? Are we going to break through by force?" "Rest assured, I'll stall the demigod illusion. The rest of you will deal with the other winged statues while destroying the pivot of the demigod illusion." Consort Yu pursed her lips and said, "An incomplete illusion of a demigod. I would like to see if I can resist it." Everybody was greatly relieved. After all, it would be fine as long as they were not asked to confront the demigod head-on. As for who was playing with the demigod illusion, it was none of their business. Speaking of which, Consort Yu was indeed very strong. It would benefit her a lot if she tried to resist the incomplete illusion of a demigod. Chances were that she would have some understanding about becoming a demigod. Right now, Consort Yu's main direction of training was to improve the power of her various methods and to study how to become a demigod. There was an opportunity right before her eyes, and she was not willing to give it up. Very soon, the plan was made because time did not allow them to come up with other solutions. The demigod illusion had already charged at them with the other multi-winged stone statues. At least hundreds of multi-winged stone statues were charging at them. Consort Yu's entire body was enveloped in a netherworld divine characters. At the same time, white divine light bloomed. Black and white, two completely different kinds of power, actually converged and fused together, forming a beautiful scenery in this yellow sandstorm. The others had no time to pay attention to Consort Yu's battle. They all gathered together and flew toward the side of the demigod illusion. This side was the side with fewer winged statues. There were more than 200 of them in total, and all of them were at the level of 3rd or 4th level sovereigns. For them, it was a piece of cake, and they could deal with them easily. After all, apart from Consort Yu, the others were also at the level of 5th or 6th level sovereigns. They were not ordinary 5th or 6th level sovereigns. It was very easy to deal with the winged statues of 3rd or 4th level sovereigns, as long as there were not too many of them. Long Yu and Red Oriole were in Consort Yu's small world. At this moment, they were rushing toward the demigod illusion together with Consort Yu. Although it was incomplete, its terrifying aura was still somewhat frightening. But in comparison, there is still a huge gap between this demigod illusion and a real demigod. At least it doesn't give me the feeling that I can't defeat it. Long Yu stared at the demigod illusion leisurely. After all, Consort Yu was there to deal with it. All he needed to do was watch the battle. He recalled the time when he faced the 2 demigod experts of the Ice God clan and the Desolate God clan. The pressure was so real that he could not muster the courage to fight against them at all. Even a glance from them would be enough for Long Yu to completely explode. However, this demigod illusion did not have such an aura. It was just an illusion that had the power of a demigod, but did not have the aura, inner strength, or combat skills of a demigod. Needless to say, this demigod illusion was incomplete. It was missing half of its wings. For the multi-winged race, it could be said to be fatally weakened. At least its strength was reduced by half, and its body's balance was also affected. It was even more difficult for it to use its combat skills perfectly. Seeing the others moving toward the demigod illusion array's eye, Consort Yu was also relieved. As long as she could hold them off for a while, she would be able to escape after the others destroyed the array eye. If the others did not destroy the array eye, Consort Yu would undoubtedly be caught in a very difficult situation. However, she believed that the others would not leave her behind. Leaving everything else aside, Shualuo alone would not leave her behind. It must be noted that she still had Long Yu and Red Oriole in her small world. As for the others, such as Little White, they probably would not leave Consort Yu and the other 2. In any case, Consort Yu was quite confident about dealing with this incomplete demigod illusion. Therefore, she did not pay much attention to the others. Let's go. Very soon, Concubine Yu reached the illusionary image of the gigantic demigod. She passed through the infinite sandstorm easily and landed on one of the translucent wings that held the illusion of the demigod. The black and white blades flew out and pierced through the illusions of the translucent wings. It could be sensed that the strength of the entire demigod illusion of the multi-winged clan was fading again. The wings were the source of the multi-winged race's power. Once the wings were destroyed, they would lose all their power. In a battle, destroying their wings was the main method to weaken their combat ability. Also, if one wanted to kill the enemy completely, they had to destroy the enemy's bamboo body. The entire multi-winged race was like a dragonfly with dozens of pairs of wings. However, compared to the dragonfly, the multi-winged race did not have a head. Their entire body was like a bamboo, and the dozens of pairs of wings protected the bamboo body firmly. Huff, huff. The sound of wind and sand echoed violently. Naturally, the demigod illusion would not just take a beating without fighting back. When Consort Yu landed on its wings, a terrifying sandstorm surged out of its wings. It contained the powerful power of the metal class and condensed countless bayonets in the storm, covering Consort Yu's entire body. Defense. Consort Yu's face remained unchanged. She raised her hand and condensed the divine language of Jiuyo. White divine light blossomed and formed a black and white defense barrier. It was her most commonly used defense barrier and also the method with the highest defense under the lowest consumption. To put it simply, it was the most cost-effective method. If she did not run into a stronger opponent, she would only need to use this move to defend herself. It was a pity that the demigod illusion at this moment was clearly not the ordinary opponent she had encountered before. The countless bayonets in the sandstorm poured over like raindrops. Accompanied by the sandstorm, Consort Yu's black and white defense barrier was continuously damaged. Loopholes and gaps were quickly appearing. Consort Yu's face slightly changed. She knew that she had underestimated the incomplete demigod illusion. If she only performed her congenital techniques, it was impossible for her to be a match for the demigod illusion. Thinking about that, she took out the white necklace that she was wearing on her neck without any hesitation. It was her absolute beginning divine grade necklace. It was a pity that it had been broken in the turbulence of time and space, and it was not as powerful as before. Even so, the absolute beginning divine grade necklace was still one of her strongest combat abilities. She no longer underestimated the demigod illusion in front of her. Instead, she planned to go all out. The white necklace appeared, and the power of awakening burst out. The power of awakening was much more powerful than Red Oriole's power of awakening for the demon Blood Six Wings. It's the 12th level of awakening. In Consort Yu's small world, Red Oriole stood next to Long Yu. Sensing the intensity of the power of awakening from the white necklace in Consort Yu's hand, Red Oriole couldn't help but feel shocked. Consort Yu is not much older than her, but in terms of martial arts level, martial arts techniques, and the awakening of the absolute beginning divine grade, Consort Yu is much more powerful than Red Oriole in every aspect. The 12th level of awakening. Doesn't that mean that she is already awakened to the peak? Long Yu was also a little surprised. That's right. This absolute beginning divine grade necklace has already awakened its own consciousness, just like your little void. It's a pity that such a beautiful necklace is a little broken. Red Oriole felt that it was a pity. Long Yu's heart skipped a beat. Looking at the cracks on Consort Yu's absolute beginning divine grade necklace, he couldn't help but recall the scene when he had just left the Nine Serenities realm and encountered the self-detonation of the Lushan clan's great dominator expert, Ji Yuan Dao Yi. He didn't know it back then, but now that he thought about it, Ji Yuan Dao, he must have the strength of a rank 7 great dominator. The spatial turbulence caused by his self-detonation had actually caused cracks to appear on the white necklace. Consort Yu has really done a lot for me, Long Yu thought to himself. But now is not the time to be thinking about this. After the white necklace was taken out, Consort Yu immediately activated the power of awakening, the absolute beginning divine grade awakening skill. Chapter 13:11. Although the white necklace was slightly damaged, its power was not weakened by much because of that. It still had a high destructive power. Snow-white, immortal light burst out from the necklace. It was as dazzling as an aurora and instantly enveloped Concubine Yu's entire body. Dazzling snow-white, immortal light continued to spread out, covering everything in its path with a layer of snow-white color. The yellow sandstorm that the demigod illusion had cast instantly calmed down under the cover of the snow-white, immortal light, and the sand bayonets that were condensed within it were also quietly disintegrated. Seeing Concubine Yu use this move, Long Yu and Red Oriole were both shocked. This snow-white immortal light that was as dazzling as an aurora actually had the effect of dissolving the power of other divine runes. It was just like Long Yu's Path of the Nine Nether, which could disintegrate all spatial divine runes. However, in comparison, Consort Yu's skills seemed to be more practical. It could be used to deal with almost any situation in a battle. All power and divine symbols could be dispelled. Of course, it was impossible for Long Yu and Red Oriole to know the specifics, but at least on the surface, this snow-white immortal light had such an effect. With that awakening skill, Consort Yu easily resisted the demigod illusion's fierce attacks and launched a counterattack. Although Consort Yu only wanted to stall the demigod illusion, and let other people destroy it. She had always been a very strict person. At this moment, it was a rare opportunity to fight an incomplete demigod, and she was not willing to give it up easily. The best result would be to destroy the demigod illusion before other people destroyed it. Of course, that was the highest requirement and very difficult. She might not be able to do it even if she tried her best. But in any case, she would not admit defeat easily. Since she had already done it, she had to do it to the best of her abilities. Divine light flowed on the white necklace again and turned into countless white light balls that spread out. It was another awakening skill of the divine quality primordium. Once these snow-white balls of light came into contact with anything, they would explode and produce unparalleled destructive power. The demigod illusion of the multi-winged clan had translucent wings all over its body. It accidentally touched one of the white light balls. Then, the light ball exploded, and the divine light spread out and fell on the translucent wings. The powerful purification power purified the translucent wings of the multi-winged clan into the purest primordium power of the metal class. Several wings were disintegrated just like that. The purification effect of the light balls was supposed to deal with negative statuses, such as control effects and mental intimidation. It was similar to Long Yu's pure world body, but now it had a miraculous effect on these illusions. This was because these illusions were formed from the condensation of metal-type primordial power and did not possess life. As soon as they came into contact with the purifying power, they were immediately purified into the purest metal-type primordial power. More and more snow-white light balls appeared and scattered in all directions. Faced with such a situation, the mirage of the multi-winged demigod would certainly not wait to be killed. All the strength in its body finally burst out, and a terrifying sandstorm instantly rose, blowing away the remaining snowy white light balls. Then, the sandstorm rolled toward where Consort U was. Among the sandstorm, there were also long golden light marks that attacked Consort U from all directions. Those golden light marks kept flashing in the sandstorm. Once they touched anything, they would grab the enemy tightly. It was an extremely terrifying control skill. Countless golden light marks approached Consort U, blocking any direction that Consort U could escape in. Like a giant golden cage, they completely trapped her. Although the demigod illusion was incomplete, it was still much more powerful than Consort U. Consort U had always been at a disadvantage in the competition of many skills. It was exactly the same at this moment. Faced with the golden light marks, it was exactly the same as the white light balls that she had just performed. The demigod illusion could blow away the white light balls with a sandstorm, but Consort U did not have enough power to disperse the golden light marks. She could only avoid them with other methods. 9 Serenity's disintegration. Yufei pursed her lips and let out a soft cry. A layer of 9 nether divine characters appeared on her body in an instant. This layer of 9 nether divine characters contained a hint of revelation grade 9 nether divine characters, causing the 9 nether aura on her body to become extremely dense. Concubine Yu, who had been using immortal light a moment ago, had now turned into 9 nether divine characters and disintegrated. It was as if her entire body had turned into a black mist. Then, she split into several balls and dispersed in all directions, easily escaping through the gaps of the golden light marks. Not far away, the clouds of black mist gathered together once again, forming Concubine Yu's figure in a moment. However, the demigod illusion did not give Consort U any time to catch her breath. The sandstorm came again and surged toward where Consort U was at. Without any hesitation, Consort U activated the white necklace and activated the awakening skill again. This time, countless rays of divine light extended out of the necklace and entangled the demigod illusion. The demigod illusion was so huge that Consort U was like an ant in front of it. But at this moment, the ant had tied up the demigod illusion with countless white rays of divine light. Those white rays of divine light still contained some power of purification, which kept purifying the demigod illusion into the purest primordial power of the metal class and disintegrating the power inside its body. The pairs of wings were all purified by Consort You. After all, it was not a real demigod, but an incomplete demigod illusion. It did not have much fighting awareness. Since it could not suppress Consort You in terms of power, it was not surprising that it would be defeated by Consort You if the battle went on like this. It should be about time. Consort You kept activating the white necklace. After all, it was a powerful primordial necklace that had awakened to level 12, and its awakening skills were very terrifying. With only 3 awakening skills, Consort You had pushed the demigod illusion to a dead end. However, what happened next still made Consort You's expression change, because she sensed that the demigod illusion before her seemed to have realized that it was no match for her. So, it began to gather power where its bamboo body was. Endless primordial power of the metal class gathered around its body. It seemed like it was going to self-destruct. The self-destruction of 7th phase Great Dominator would cause space-time turbulence, which caused Consort You's primordial necklace to shatter and also caused Long Yu to be swept to an extremely distant historical site in the galaxy. That was why the series of events in the outside world had happened. Now, what would happen if this demigod illusion self-destructed? Although it was only an illusion, the power inside its body was exactly the same as that of a demigod. It was not weaker than a real demigod expert at all. Even if this demigod illusion was incomplete, its power was at least half that of a real demigod. It was still many times stronger than a 7th phase Great Dominator. If such an existence self-destructed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Consort You frowned, and once again activated the snow-white necklace in her hand. White celestial light blossomed once more. This time, it actually turned into snow-white dragons. There was a total of 7 dragons, and they directly bit down on the demigod illusion. The 7 snow-white dragons were completely made of snow-white celestial light. They had no eyes, ears, or noses. They were purely a snow-white light dragon. When they bit down on the demigod illusion, they directly swallowed it and turned it into their own power. The 7 snow-white dragons bit down together, and in a short instant, they weakened the demigod illusion's power by at least 10%. However, in the next moment, the demigod illusion's power inside its body was almost completely condensed, and it looked like it was about to self-destruct. Consort You, Red Oriole, and Long Yu all had their hearts in their throats. If this demigod illusion really self-destructed, the 3 of them would bear the brunt of it, and they would definitely not have a good ending. To put it nicely, even if they didn't die, they would be crippled. However, it was also at this moment that all the power in the demigod illusion's body seemed to have been drained. The power that it had gathered to self-destruct instantly turned into a pile of loose sand and drifted in all directions. The demigod illusion array has been destroyed. Consort You immediately realized what was going on, and she couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. She really didn't expect that this demigod illusion would self-destruct even if it couldn't defeat it. Although it was only an incomplete demigod illusion, the power of its self-destruction was probably not something that she could withstand. If it really self-destructs, we actually won't die. I have an innate technique that can simulate any power, and then I won't be hurt in any environment. Long Yu said with a smile. Of course, it was a bitter smile, because he also knew that the imitation of the Book of Shadows really consumed too much power. Even though he had stepped into the lower level of Sovereign, if he wanted to maintain the Book of Shadows to simulate the primordial power, he would have to consume 10% of his power for every breath of time. In other words, he could at most last 10 breaths of time in the wave of power from the demigod illusion's self-destruction. Speaking of which, the Book of Shadows' ability to transform into nothingness and imitate other powers had their own uses. Transforming into nothingness didn't consume as much energy, but it couldn't be used as a defensive method. It could only be used as a concealment method. If they were bombarded by a power that was too strong and the space of nothingness shattered, then long annihility transformation wouldn't be of any help. In some extreme situations, it was still safer to simulate power. The array has been destroyed. Let's go. Someone shouted in front of them. It was Elder Yang. They had already flown to the front and were about to encounter another water-type primordial power barrier. The remains of countless winged stone statues were scattered in the void and gradually disintegrated in the yellow sandstorm. Chapter 13:12. Everyone quickly advanced towards the entrance of the primordial outsider ruins. Along the way, there were constantly yellow sand-winged stone statues blocking their way. However, they were all destroyed by the group's attacks. Any stone statues blocking their way were dealt with a wave of their hands. However, there were more and more stone statues surrounding them from other directions. The group had no other path of retreat. They could either charge all the way to the entrance and leave the primordial outsider ruins, or they would be drowned by the countless yellow, sand-winged stone statues. Consort Yu quickly caught up to the others. She used a black and white defensive barrier to protect Long Yu, allowing Long Yu to use the Path of 9 Underworlds to destroy the water elemental origin power spatial barrier even faster. Long Yu was naturally duty-bound to do so. This was the only time he could do something for the group. Soon, the water elemental origin power barrier was destroyed by everyone's combined efforts. They passed through the barrier, but discovered that the yellow, sand-winged stone statues on the other side of the barrier were even more concentrated. In addition to the stone statues chasing from behind, they had practically surrounded them so tightly that not even a drop of water could escape. I need to increase my cultivation. Long Yu's heart thumped, and he immediately said to Consort Yu. The situation was extremely urgent. Whether they could escape or not depended on the speed at which they destroyed the water elemental origin power barrier. If Long Yu could increase his martial realm, then the Path of 9 Underworld ability to destroy the water elemental origin power barrier would increase several-fold. The speed at which they destroyed the water elemental origin power barrier would also increase several-fold. In fact, if he could step into the realm of a mid-level dominator, he only needed to destroy the water elemental origin power barrier by himself, and the speed at which he destroyed the water elemental origin power barrier would be much faster than before. According to the current situation, if they wanted to destroy the water elemental origin power barrier later on, someone would have to block the yellow, sand-winged stone statues that surrounded them. Under such circumstances, Long Yu could only grit his teeth and attempt the seemingly impossible. This was because he had just become a low-level dominator not long ago. It was not that easy to become a mid-level dominator now. Fortunately, Consort Yu had 3rd grade and 2nd grade heavenly crystal grade creations. Originally, they could only be distributed outside, but now they could only be given to Long Yu. Of course, Long Yu would not take it for free. He directly asked Consort Yu for a 3rd grade and a 2nd grade heavenly crystal grade creation item. Then he gave the unknown alien demigod corpse to Consort Yu in exchange. The body of an unknown demigod of an unknown alien race was worth at least more than 10 million battlefield military credits. It was almost the same value for the two creations. Nobody was taking advantage of the situation. Then, Long Yu began to absorb the power of creation from these two creation items in Consort Yu's small world. The Nether Void Dragon Blade was held in Long Yu's hand. It absorbed the creation item with all its might, then completely transferred the creation item into Long Yu's body, allowing Long Yu to absorb it continuously. Moreover, it began to expand the small world. From a low-level dominator to a mid-level dominator, the key was the expansion of the small world. From a radius of 10 billion kilometers to a radius of 20 billion kilometers, one could almost reach the level of a mid-level dominator. If he completely absorbed the power of creation from these two creation items, then Long Yu would still be able to successfully break through. This was also thanks to the Nether Void Dragon Blade. If not for the Nether Void Dragon Blade, Long Yu would need at least twice as many cultivation resources to increase his realm. Long Yu continued to absorb the power of creation, while the others quickly moved forward in the yellow sandstorm. Everyone was getting closer and closer to the exit. However, in Consort Yu's perception, There were at least 3 layers of water primordial power barriers blocking them from the exit, and these 3 barriers were related to everyone's life and death. More and more winged sand statues gathered. Once again, the group unleashed their techniques to stop the winged sand statues from surrounding them. Stone statues were continuously smashed into smithereens, disintegrating into pure metal elemental primordial energy within the sandstorm. Very soon, another layer of water primordial power appeared in front of everyone. Long Yu, it's time for you to come out. Consort Yu said to Long Yu in a deep voice. Although she knew that Long Yu was in the process of absorbing the power of creation and expanding the small world, she had no choice but to disturb him. Because without Long Yu, the speed of destroying this layer of water primordial power would be halved. Even if it was only for a short period of time, the whole situation would be completely out of control. On the other side of the water element primordial force barrier, there were already quite a number of winged yellow sandstone statues. If they were too slow in destroying the barrier, more and more stone statues would gather. Even if they passed through the barrier, they would still fall into the other side's encirclement. It would be extremely difficult for them to charge out. When Long Yu heard Consort Yu's words, he nodded and stopped absorbing the power of creation. This was something that could not be helped. After coming out, under the protection of Consort Yu's black and white barrier, he once again activated the path of 9 underworlds to destroy and disintegrate the layer of water primordial power. This time, Nightmare Thunder and Maru Hun couldn't participate in the destruction of the barrier because they were in charge of fending off the yellow, sand-winged stone statues. There were more than 100 stone statues approaching. If they didn't kill them all, the situation would become very troublesome. This kid, his ability to disintegrate spatial divine runes is really strong. Everyone looked at Long Yu's path of 9 underworlds, using absolute power to disintegrate the water primordial power. They could not help but think that even though Dark Thunder and Mariolet did not participate in attacking the barrier, the speed at which the barrier was disintegrating was not much slower because Long Yu was supporting it. After an incense sticks time, the water primordial power barrier was finally broken, and Dark Thunder and Mariolet finally heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone filed out, and in front, Consort Yu and Shui Luo were the first to use their techniques. Blood-colored divine runes and black and white sharp blades rapidly swept out, completely destroying at least hundreds of stone statues that were guarding the opposite side of the barrier, forcibly blasting open a path. It won't be so easy from now on. Just 2 more barriers, and we will reach the entrance at the beginning. Concubine Yu shouted and led the way. At the same time, she sent Long Yu back into her pocket dimension. Naturally, Long Yu continued to absorb the power in the creations and try to break into the level of middle-level dominator. It was a pity that his plan was disrupted by an accident after all. They kept moving forward, but before they saw the next barrier of the water primordial power barrier, a translucent illusion of an enormous winged demigod suddenly appeared before them, and a sandstorm condensed by the primordial power of the metal class rolled over. There was another demigod illusion array. The situation alarmed everybody, and they immediately panicked. In front of them was the demigod illusion, and they were surrounded by the winged stone statues. Which way should they go to break out of the encirclement? It was definitely impossible to go through the demigod illusion. Did they really have to charge at the thousands of winged stone statues? They could have just walked in a straight line to the end, but a demigod illusion array appeared halfway. I'll resist the demigod illusion. You guys go and destroy the eye of the array. Same as before. In the blink of an eye, Consort Yu immediately made a decision. Her ethereal body in the color of 9 underworlds and the white divine light immediately flew toward the demigod illusion. No problem. Dark Thunder and Orb Soul looked at each other and nodded. Then, they led the rest of them to the side. There were not many winged stone statues on that side, and they could break out and approach the pivot of the demigod illusion circle. This demigod illusion is not incomplete. Let me help you. Little White, the white-haired young man of the human race, did not follow Dark Thunder and Ball Soul. Instead, He followed Consort Yu to the demigod illusion, hoping to stall it with Consort Yu. Shueluo hesitated for a moment and also stayed, because it was still difficult for Consort Yu and Little White to stall a complete demigod illusion of the multi-winged clan. It was time for Shueluo to use some of his trump cards. Consort Yu, Little White, and Shueluo were responsible for stalling the demigod illusion. Dark Thunder, Ball Soul, Lord Yang, Boss Xiong, and Su Yuqing, on the other hand, rushed toward the eye of the demigod illusion array, trying to destroy it like before. This time, it was not as smooth as the last time. The one they encountered before was an incomplete demigod illusion array. The eye of the array and the strength of the demigod illusion were far inferior to this one, not to mention that there were countless winged stone statues around. Is this the power of a demigod? The demigod illusion of the multi-winged clan flapped its wings, and a sandstorm came at them. Some of the golden daggers in the storm were extremely destructive. It could be seen that these golden daggers were flying towards the group of winged yellow sandstone statues in the distance. Each dagger was able to destroy more than 10 statues in a row. More importantly, there were 100 of such golden daggers chasing after Consort Yu and the other two. "Dot!" Concubine Yu shouted. She knew that she couldn't fight against these golden daggers. She quickly retreated and rushed into the group of winged stone statues. One golden dagger after another stabbed into the group of winged stone statues following her. Many stone statues failed to dodge in time and were directly destroyed by the golden daggers. Shueluo and Little White encountered the same situation the moment they followed Consort Yu. They adopted the same method as Consort Yu did and attracted the golden daggers in the sandstorm to the group of winged stone statues. On the other side, they ran into trouble too. Dark Thunder, Ball Soul, and the others moved toward the eye of the array, but the power of the metal class was suddenly condensed before them, and an enormous multi-winged demigod illusion appeared before them again. Two demigod illusions appeared at the same time. Without a doubt, 2 demigod illusion arrays had been set up in this tiny space. This situation caused everyone to be greatly shocked. Dark Thunder, Ball Soul, and the other 2 dodged subconsciously, but the multi-winged demigod illusion that had just appeared summoned a violent storm of the metal class, which swept at the 5 of them. In desperation, the 5 of them fled in all directions. Not to mention destroying the eye of the array, it was already a problem for them to stay alive. Chapter 13:13. The situation immediately became extremely perilous. Consort Yu, Shueluo, and Little White were in grave danger under the attack of the first demigod illusion. The other 5, on the other hand, were fleeing under the attack of the second demigod illusion. It was impossible for them to destroy the pivot of the demigod illusion circle. Run! Without any hesitation, Meng Lei and Maru Hun simply turned around and fled to the entrance, not bothering to care about other people at all under such circumstances. 2 demigod illusions were a destructive blow for them. If they stayed here for too long, they would definitely be wiped out. Under such circumstances, who would care about the pivot? Under the storm of the second demigod illusion, Maru Hun, Meng Lei, Master Yang, Boss Xiong, and Su Yuqing were all blown away in the storm. Most of them were blown to the same direction, which was the exit of the entire primeval alien relic. As long as they destroyed 2 more barriers of the primordial force of water, they would be able to leave this place. As for the 2 demigod illusion circles, they did not need to care about them. After all, one of them had been distracted by Consort Yu and the rest of them. As for the second one, it would be enough for them to destroy the barrier of the primordial force and leave. At the moment of life and death, Maru Han had no time to care about anything else. He released all the alien race puppets that he had raised. There were hundreds of them in total, and every one of them was different. Of course, most of them were alien races that he had refined into puppets. 500 alien race puppets, under his control, charged at the second demigod illusion. The ice gods, the fire gods, the desolate gods, and so on, all kinds of alien race puppets were attacking the second demigod illusion nonstop. Meng Lei was also gathering the primordial thunder and bombarding the demigod illusion, while he himself kept retreating. Master Yang, Boss Xiong, and Su Yuqing, on the other hand, looked at Consort Yu apologetically, but they still chose to leave in the end. They followed Meng Lei and Maru Hun and charged at the entrance. 2 demigod illusion circles. This is really beyond our expectations. This is too strange. We took this route when we came here. Why didn't any demigod illusion appear at that time? And now there are 2 at the same time. Su Yuqing's expression was extremely gloomy. He really couldn't bear to give up on Consort Yu and the others, but he had no other choice. Is it possible that the 2 demigod illusion circles were triggered because the barriers were fully activated? I'm afraid no one knows what's going on, but the only thing we can do now is run for our lives. Old Yang also said with great regret. The 5 of them ran all the way ahead. Occasionally, they would look back, only to discover that Consort Yu, Shuai Luo, and Little White had been completely trapped by the multi-winged stone statues. The first demigod illusion was still launching terrifying attacks and almost blowing the area into hell. Soon, with the help of Maru Hun's 300 or 400 alien puppets, the 5 of them stopped the second demigod illusion and came to the next layer of the primordial force of water barrier. Then, they quickly bombarded the barrier. Without Long Yu, the speed at which they bombarded the primordial force of water barrier became much slower, and it took them at least twice as long. But the good thing was that most of the stone statues had been attracted to where Consort Yu and the others were, and not many of the stone statues paid attention to them. After 10 minutes, the primordial force of water barrier was finally broken, and the 5 of them passed it one by one. At this time, the 300 or 400 alien puppets had also been completely destroyed by the second demigod illusion. For Maru Hun, those alien puppets were treasures that he had accumulated for a long time. Now that they were all destroyed at once, he felt extremely pained. But compared to his life, it was nothing. If the alien puppets were destroyed, he could catch them and refine them again. But if he lost his life, he would lose everything. Before the 5 of them left, they looked back one last time, but they could not see Consort Yu and the others at all. There's nothing we can do. This alien relic is too dangerous. Anyone could die here. Boss Bear said in a deep voice. He did not want to look back. In fact, they had already come here, and there was no possibility of turning back. If it was possible, of course, they would not want to give up Consort Yu and the others. But now that 2 demigod illusion circles had appeared at the same time, and 2 demigod illusions of the multi-winged race were definitely not something they could deal with. In the current situation, they would probably try to escape as many as they could. The 5 of them gradually disappeared from the sight of Consort Yu and the others. Very soon, Consort Yu could not even sense their existence with her soul sense. They're gone. Consort Yu's tone was very calm. In fact, when the second demigod illusion circle was triggered, she had already guessed that this would be the result. Shuai Luo and Little White were still passing through the group of multi-winged stone statues in the yellow sand, but it seemed that they had consumed a lot of energy and would not be able to hold on much longer. At this moment, Consort Yu had also felt the strength of a real demigod, which was much stronger than the incomplete demigod illusion from before. It was not something she could fight against at all. The only thing she could do was to survive as long as possible. But now, it was meaningless to try her best to survive, because there was no one to help her destroy the formation eye of the demigod illusion circle. Consort Yu had to kill this demigod illusion, but with her strength, she was not a match for this demigod illusion at all. She did have a trump card, but even if she used it, she might not be able to defeat this demigod illusion. More importantly, after defeating this demigod illusion, there would be another one next to it. In any case, it was not a good idea for her to fight recklessly. Are they gone? Long Yu was still absorbing the power of creation. Hearing what Consort Yu said, he could not help but think of something. Then what should I do now? If Senior Consort Yu can't do anything, I do have an idea. Huh? Tell me. Consort Yu was a bit interested. I'll find the two seniors, Luo and Little White first. Then, all of you will enter my small world. I'll perform the congenital technique of the Book of Shadows and simulate the pure primordial power of the gold class. I should be able to avoid the detection of this demigod illusion and leave this place secretly. The only problem is that with my current strength, I can only hold on for 10 seconds at most. Long Yu said in a low voice. To be honest, I'm afraid it's very difficult for me to reach the barrier of the primordial power of the water in 10 seconds. How far can you go? Consort Yu asked solemnly. The answer to this question was very important. If she could get 3 meters closer to the barrier, she might be able to come up with the next plan. About 30 kilometers. But the next barrier of the primordial power of the water seems to be 50 kilometers away. Long Yu replied solemnly. That's fine. I can also buy some time for us to move forward. If that's the case, there's no need to hesitate. I'll go gather Luo and Little White first. Yufei nodded her head and said. Then, her entire body was covered in black and white light. The 9 nether divine characters and white celestial light turned into black and white blades that revolved around her body. All the winged sandstone statues that got close to her were cut into pieces. Consort Yu's body was like countless rotating blades, passing through the winged stone statues easily. However, such a method looked glamorous and impressive, but it consumed a lot of energy. Even Consort Yu could not hold on for long. The attention of the first demigod illusion and the second demigod illusion was now focused on Consort Yu, Luo, and Little White. Compared to Yufei, Whitey was clearly a bit more relaxed at this moment. This was because he had comprehended some kind of divine text or some kind of innate divine ability, causing his entire person to have a kind of unremarkable quality. Even in such an environment, the number of winged stone statues around Little White was the least. This was because very few of them would pay attention to him first. Instead, they would directly rush towards where Consort Yu and Luo were. This made Little White very relaxed, even more so than Consort Yu. As for the 2 demigod illusions, they also rushed towards Consort Yu and Luo, completely ignoring Little White. It could be seen that Little White's special temperament was very effective in certain situations. However, this was not good news for Luo. Luo only had the cultivation of a 5th phase Great Dominator. It was already very difficult for him to pass through the group of winged stone statues. When the second demigod illusion attacked, he immediately fell into a predicament that he could not escape from. The bloody wings had appeared on his back a long time ago, and he had turned into the original body of a blood demon. When the sandstorm cast by the illusion of the demigod arrived, he immediately turned into a river of blood and dispersed to all directions. This was also one of his escape methods. After the pool of blood dispersed and avoided the sandstorm cast by the demigod illusion, it condensed again not far away and reformed into Luo's original form. Luo, come here. Consort Yu's voice came from his side. She easily glided through the area and enveloped Luo with the power of her black and white world. Luo's expression changed slightly. He could tell that Consort Yu wanted him to enter her small world. However, at this moment, if he entered the small world and hid, then Consort Yu would probably have to face the 2 demigod illusions at the same time. Quick! Seeing his hesitation, Consort Yu could not help but yell and urge him. Why are you still hesitating at this moment? Luo clenched his teeth and directly opened up his mind, allowing Consort Yu's power of her world to bring him into Consort Yu's small world. Then, Consort Yu rushed to where Little White was and quickly brought Little White in. Then, Consort Yu explained the plan to the 2 of them. In other words, little brother Long, you will bring us closer to the water element barrier, right? Not bad, not bad. I'm looking forward to it, Little White said with an elegant smile. However, it was also at this moment that a sudden change occurred. Right at the direction of the entrance to the ruins, a wave of violent explosions suddenly resounded, and it brought along a terrifying sandstorm that swept towards the surroundings. Chapter 13:14. Consort Yu, Long Yu, and the others, who were just about to move, were shocked by the noises coming from the entrance of the primordial alien ruins. What's going on? Consort Yu's brows were tightly furrowed. Too many accidents had happened today. If something happened at the entrance, would they still be able to advance in that direction? Very soon, the sandstorm at the entrance swept to where everybody was, shattering the barrier of the primordial force of water on its way. Even the illusions of the two demigods were slightly damaged in the storm. This situation made Consort Yu's heart skip a beat. She knew that it would be very difficult for her to resist such a violent storm. She immediately made a decision. Long Yu, come out and use the Book of Shadows. Take us away from here. At the very least, we have to survive this storm. As for the way forward, don't go to the exit. Go to the center of the primordial ruin. When this decision was made, everyone was shocked. Don't go to the exit? Isn't that courting death? Long Yu was a little surprised. Idiot, there was such a violent explosion at the entrance, and such a powerful sandstorm swept out. It's obvious that something unexpected happened. It's very likely that the entrance no longer exists. You should know that the entrance to the alien ruins is very fragile. Red Oriole explained to Long Yu. I see. Long Yu nodded solemnly. He did not expect this situation, but now that Red Oriole mentioned it, he also felt that it was very likely. Although he did not know what had happened at the entrance, it was normal for the entire entrance to collapse after such a large-scale explosion. Consort Yu and the others were definitely very experienced in exploring the alien ruins. Naturally, they could make the most accurate judgment in the shortest amount of time. Long Yu only needed to do what they said. Then come. A moment later, Long Yu flew out from Consort Yu's pocket world. Then, with a raise of his hand, the power of his world enveloped Consort Yu and the others, sucking them into his pocket world. Then, right before the sandstorm arrived, Long Yu activated the innate skill, the Book of Shadows. His figure suddenly disappeared and turned into a wave of pure metal elemental primordial energy. This was the most suitable method to use in the current situation. After Long Yu transformed into the metal-type absolute beginning power, he easily drifted into the interior of the primordial alien ruins along with the yellow sandstorm. In the blink of an eye, he had passed through countless winged stone statues in the yellow sand and arrived at a place hundreds of miles away. The winged statues were basically shattered in the violent storm. Even the two demigod phantoms were slightly injured. As for what happened to the demigod phantoms in the end, it was none of Long Yu's business, because the two demigod phantoms had already disappeared in front of him. 10 seconds was the longest time that Long Yu could simulate the metal origin power with the Book of Shadows. Very soon, half of the time had passed. At this time, the violent storm finally slowed down a little. The explosion that erupted from the entrance was actually able to travel 300 to 400 kilometers. At the same time, the metal origin power that Long Yu had transformed into was also blown into the depths of the primordial alien ruins. Long Yu had no idea where this place was. Everything was too chaotic in the storm. He couldn't even tell the direction at all. Anyway, he was sure that this place was even closer to the center of the ruins than the gloomy palace where the unknown demigod of the alien race was imprisoned. The sky was still full of yellow sand. Long Yu looked around casually and saw 3 palaces made of yellow sand. Although they were all small, the discovery was enough to make him excited. If there were treasures in each of the sand palaces, then there would be at least a dozen heaven crystal level items in the 3 palaces. How high would the total value be? However, Long Yu was not happy for long, because he knew the situation that they were in right now. Not to mention that they were too few to explore the palaces. Even if they successfully obtained the items in the palaces, how were they going to leave the primordial alien ruins? The entrance when they came in had been blown up. There was no telling if Ming Lei and the others had successfully left. Thankfully, Long Yu's side was safe for now. There was no sign of a single stone statue with wings, nor was there any magic circle that could create demigod illusions. In the void that was filled with yellow sand, a few palaces made of yellow sand were floating quietly near and far away. There was no telling how long they had been there. After less than 10 seconds, Long Yu sensed that the storm around him had calmed down. He found a safe place and returned to his human form. Then he released Consort Yu, Shui Luo, Little White, and Red Oriole from the small world. Everybody looked around and did not look too good. Although this place was safe for now, and the attack of the two demigod phantoms was gone, it was even more dangerous after all, because they were closer to the center of the alien relics. Although it was a helpless move, they still felt frustrated. The three palaces made Consort Yu and the rest of them more or less excited, but when they thought of their current situation, they could not be excited anymore. What do we do now? Shui Luo asked Consort Yu solemnly. We can only look for other exits. We have to be careful of any dangers around. Long Yu, can you still explore with your Tartarian hunter? Consort Yu looked at Long Yu. No problem. But which direction should we go? Long Yu asked solemnly. I don't know. Let's just pick a random direction. As for the palaces, we'd better not touch them in case we trigger any barriers. If that happens, we won't even be able to keep our lives. Consort Yu shook her head and said, I think so too. Although it's a pity, we've gained a lot this time. Let's focus on safety. Little White nodded in agreement. Then he smiled at Long Yu and said, Brother Long Yu, your strength is truly extraordinary. You brought us so far in such a storm. Impressive. It's just that the nature of the innate mystique is a little special. In that case, Senior Consort Yu, please decide the direction we should go. Long Yu did not want to discuss his methods. Therefore, he immediately changed the topic and asked Consort Yu to choose the direction they should go. Now was not the time for them to waste time. Yu Fei nodded. She raised her head and swept a glance into the distance. Then, she pointed to the middle of two yellow sand palaces. Let's explore this direction first. If there are no accidents, we will take this path. Consort Yu, why did you choose this path? Little White smiled and asked. I just randomly chose. If you have any other suggestions, feel free to tell me. Consort Yu glanced at him and said, No, if I were to randomly choose, I would also choose this direction. Little White chuckled. His white hair fluttered in the wind. He squinted his eyes and looked at the two palaces not far away and said, The location and shape of these two palaces look a little like the Guardian Palaces. Even if we have the guts to go in and explore, I'm afraid we won't be able to obtain anything. Instead, we will be punished by the Guardian Palaces. Generally speaking, after these two Guardian Palaces, it should be the main palace of the foreign race's ruins. If there really is a main palace, should we go and explore it? These words made Shui Luo a little tempted. Although it was dangerous, the main palace of the foreign race's ruins was too attractive. If it was anyone else, they would also find it hard to resist such temptation. If the palaces they had explored before were just ordinary palaces, then the inventory of the main palace of the ruins would be at least 10 times that of those palaces. In terms of heaven crystal grade creation items, there would be at least 50 of them. If they could obtain it, it would definitely be an extremely terrifying amount of wealth. However, the difficulty was also obvious. If there was a main palace, the defensive restrictions would definitely be much more than those of the other palaces. If they wanted to safely take out the treasures from it, the difficulty would be at least 10 times higher than those of the other palaces. Let's wait until we find the main palace before making a decision. Perhaps there won't be a main palace. Then it would be a waste of time for us to discuss this problem now. Little White chuckled. Everyone watched as Long Yu sent the 9 Nether Hunter out and passed through the center of the two palaces. They all started to feel nervous again. After coming to this ancient foreign race's ruins, no one could calm down because danger was really everywhere. At any time, various forms of danger could appear and kill them. Under such circumstances, no one could calm down, not even Consort Yu. Even demigod experts would have to be careful when coming here. The 9 Nether Hunter quickly passed through the space between the two yellow sand palaces and flew for over 15 miles without encountering any accidents. When the 9 Nether Hunter was 40 kilometers away and was just about to completely pass through the two palaces, it suddenly touched a layer of space barrier that was difficult to notice. Long Yu's heart shook, and he instantly became nervous. But he quickly noticed that no restrictions were triggered on this layer of space barrier. No winged statues appeared, and no demigod illusion formation was activated. However, the Nine Nether Hunter was unable to pass through the layer of space barrier. Long Yu explained the situation to the others, and, Consort, you said, let the Nine Nether Hunter go around it. Perhaps the space barrier only occupies a small part of the space. Long Yu nodded, and then he started to control the Nine Nether Hunter to try. Now, they could only look at the Nine Nether Hunter from afar and didn't dare to approach it. Otherwise, they would be doomed if they triggered any restrictions. Under Long Yu's control, the Nine Nether Hunters started to probe in all directions, trying to find a route that could bypass the layer of space barrier. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.